Chapter 366. There were only 3 people left in the previously crowded meeting room. They were Cloudy Sword Celestial Liu Lei, White Colt Sword Celestial Ju Wudao, and the Pleated Sword Spirit. Communication with the freeman was a confidential matter. The rest of the people were excluded, leaving only the 3 swordbearers with sufficient status and strength. Connect them, Ju Wudao said to his personal terminal. Immediately, a projector was lowered from the ceiling of the meeting room, projecting a figure in front of the 3 people. Updraft. Seeing the figure that was projected, Ju Wudao's eyes flashed with a bright light. Just now, he had specially looked through the information of the free people and immediately linked this figure with a famous name. It was a petite figure, only about 1.6 meters tall, with a small flower on her head. Her long, straight, black hair made her look like a naive and romantic girl. It was hard to imagine that this girl was actually related to the powerful Esper among the free ones. Updraft. Good afternoon, gentlemen swordbearers. I'm Lei Zi. Nice to meet you. This freeman, nicknamed Updraft, spoke with a warm tone and attitude. It was hard to associate her with a powerful freeman. Hypocrite. When the pleated sword spirit saw the rising stream of tears, she was instantly enraged. She wanted nothing more than to peel off her skin, break her bones, and devour her flesh one mouthful at a time. If it were not for Liu Lei and Ju Wudao's repeated warnings, the pleated sword spirit would have cursed her on the spot. I'm sorry. We deeply regret the deaths in your city. This is not what we wanted to happen. Updraft actually apologized. Looking at her standard 90-degree bow, it seemed that her apology was sincere. Updraft, what do you mean by this? Are you playing us like monkeys? You killed my people, and now you're apologizing to me. Do you think that your apology can save the lives of more than 100 human swordbearers? Your hands are stained with the blood of humans. This vengeance, we humans will sooner or later. Enough. Shut up. Bifold, if you dare to say another word without my permission, you'll be sent to the hospital immediately. You're not allowed to come out for 3 days. Ju Wudao directly let out an angry rebuke. His words made his wrinkled face turn blue and red. Finally, Wei Ran heaved a long sigh, and sat back powerlessly. The pleated sword spirit's heart was filled with hatred, but he also knew that Wudao couldn't do anything about it. Humanity was about to enter the difficult sword era. In this era, they really couldn't afford to become enemies with the Freedom Metropolis. Otherwise, humanity's losses would be far greater than the lives of over 100 swordbearers. It's fine. We can understand the feelings of this Mr. Sword Wielder. If we were in his shoes, if more than 100 of our companions died in the Freedom City, we would feel the same way as this Mr. We would unleash an unbearable rage, Tez said as he turned around and bowed toward the pleated sword spirit. The pleated sword spirit was expressionless. He did not move at all as he accepted the rising current's bow. Your Excellency Tez, it sounds like you don't want to be enemies with Yuzhang City and the human race, right? Liu Lei asked the most important question. The answer to this question might decide the fate of the entire human race. Of course, the Freedom Metropolis will always remain neutral. This has always been the principle of the Freedom Metropolis. It will never change. Tez replied solemnly. This answer made the 3 people in the room heave a sigh of relief. If the answer was true, then that was great. Humans wouldn't have to worry about the Freedom Metropolis joining Yuan Ku's side. If the answer was false, then it was fine. At least the Freedom Metropolis wouldn't be ready to fall out with the humans in a short period of time. This would give the humans time to make various preparations. Then, Your Excellency Tez, can you explain to us why you're here today? You've killed more than 100 human swordbearers. How do you explain that? According to the agreement signed by us humans, Yuan Ku, and the Freedom Metropolis, a battle with more than 100 casualties can be defined as a war. Liu Lei unceremoniously threw these things in front of Tez, as if the humans didn't care about declaring war on the Freedom Metropolis. No, Mr. Swordbearer. According to the agreement, it's only a declaration of war if we kill the other party with our own hands. The one who really killed those humans was Yuan Ku of the Western Demonic Beasts. It has nothing to do with us Freedom Metropolis. At most, we helped them teleport once. This hasn't reached the level of a declaration of war, Tez replied. Is that so? Ju Wudao looked at the pleated sword spirit. The other party snorted but didn't say anything. Now I'll let you speak, Ju Wudao said angrily. Of course, he knew the pleated sword spirit was bickering with him. It was a silent confrontation. I don't know. The pleated sword spirit finally spoke. I can only say that no Freedom Metropolis participated in the battle within my sight. As for the battle outside my sight, I don't know. This sword-bearer is too humble. Your sword lady is the thousand-eyed sword. We don't think we can hide anything under the thousand-eyed sword's gaze. Tez smiled. The pleated sword spirit felt a little awkward. Indeed, the thousand-eyed sword was famous for its vision that covered the entire situation. Very few things could escape the thousand-eyed sword's eyes. Under the thousand-eyed sword's gaze, it seemed like the Freedom Metropolis really hadn't made a move. Sir Tez, even if what you said is true and you Freedom Metropolis didn't make a move, you still helped the Western demonic beasts Yuan Ku teleport to the vicinity of Fort Yuyang and launch a surprise attack on the fortress. Isn't this your doing? Liu Lei questioned. That's right. We are very sorry about this. It was indeed our doing. Tez bowed slightly. The agreement didn't stipulate that we couldn't help Yuan Ku teleport. Moreover, we were forced to do so. We Freedom Metropolis had no intention of breaking the agreement. Forced to do so? You were forced to do so? Ju Wudao keenly grasped the main point of Tez's words. If the Freedom Metropolis had been forced to do so by Yuan Ku? It's a long story. We have a very important friend who is currently under the control of the Western demonic beasts. They asked us to help them move the demonic beasts away before they would release our friend. Therefore, we had no other choice, Tez said calmly. That's great. That's great. Liu Lei and Ju Wudao looked at each other. There was actually joy in their eyes. They didn't expect the situation to be completely reversed from the meeting just now. The Freedom Metropolis, who originally thought they were going to start a war with the humans, was actually forced to do so by Yuan Ku's hostage. In this way, not only would the Freedom Metropolis not become enemies with the humans, but they would also be enraged by Yuan Ku's actions. In a fit of anger, it was not impossible for them to completely join the human camp. This way, the humans would have an easier time during the difficult sword era, and they would be able to pass through the entire difficult sword era in a more stable manner. As for the more than 100 sword bearers and 3,000 civilians who had been ambushed, Liu Lei and Ju Wudao could directly ignore them. Compared to the survival of the humans, even if the death toll was 10 times higher, the humans would still have to grit their teeth and endure it. Everyone, I'm actually not contacting you to explain these things. We don't care what you think of our Freedom Metropolis. Forgive me for being blunt, but even if our Freedom Metropolis really made a move, you won't dare to do anything to us before we clearly express our intention to join the Yuan Ku camp. Teardrop's words sounded harsh and annoying, but it was the truth. Humans would never push a potential friend to their enemy. Then why did you contact us, Sir Tez? Are you purposely mocking us? Liu Lei's expression stiffened. No, I just hope that you will send someone to Fort Yuyang, Tez said and vanished. As Lei spoke, his figure disappeared, and the scene abruptly turned into a dark and gloomy scene. Only a bonfire could barely light up the entire space. It's them. Seeing this scene, the pleated blade spirit immediately jumped up from his chair. He rubbed his eyes in disbelief. In this dark space, he actually saw dozens of medical pods. There were also a few humans looking at the pleated blade spirit with a mixture of joy and sorrow. Guiyi, Lin Lei. Are you guys alright? The pleated blade spirit's eyes welled up with tears. These people were the warriors of the sword bearers under his command. They were members of the missing list. He thought they were all dead. He didn't expect to see them alive. Sir Pleated Blade. We're fine, we're all fine. We still have more than 30 brothers. They survived too. As long as they come out of the medical pods, they'll be fine again, one of the sword bearers said with tears in his eyes. It's a pity that most of our sword ladies are either broken or unable to fight anymore. Otherwise, We could have fought our way out, another sword-bearer said unwillingly. What nonsense are you guys spouting? The outside world is full of Yuan Ku demonic beasts, and their numbers are still increasing. How can you guys escape? Tears mercilessly interrupted these people's fantasies. He then said to Liu Lei and the others, these 30-plus people were saved by us freemen. This is all we can do to make up for our mistakes. We'll do our best to protect them, but the Western demonic beasts have something on us. No one knows when the Western demonic beasts will discover them. Whether we send someone to save them or not, it's up to you. Oh, right, I forgot to tell you guys. The Western demonic beasts are still recruiting. I even saw Loki. You guys should know better than us what this means. That's it. The demonic beasts are stupid, but Loki is very smart. It'll be too dangerous if we continue contacting him. If you want to send someone to save them, you can come to these coordinates. We'll send someone to meet you. Chapter 367. My lord, let me go. After the call ended, Hundredfolds immediately stood up and used his blood-stained hand to pat his blood-stained chest. After seeing that there were still more than 30 surviving swordbearers, Hundredfolds could not suppress the huge excitement in his heart at all, and the wound that had just healed with great difficulty burst open again. Sit down. Why are you so excited? Do you want to die? Zhu Wudao snorted coldly and asked. You go. Are your injuries healed? Have you repaired your thousand-eye sword? Have you recovered all the sword elements in your body? Zhu Wudao's 3 consecutive questions forced the pleated sword spirit back down. Indeed, if he went to save people now, he would be courting death. I'll go. Liu Lei said faintly. This old bag of bones hasn't fought in a long time. It's a good time to get some exercise. You're not allowed to go either. Unexpectedly, Zhu Wudao rebutted Liu Lei again. The freelancer made it very clear that Loki is already there. There's no guarantee that other gods from the Western pantheon won't appear. I don't want to lose one of the only 2 immortal sword-level swordbearers in Yuzhang City just for the sake of 30 ancient sword and treasure swordbearers. It's just Loki. Even if he's an Eon-level Yuan Ku, I'm confident that I can suppress him. Liu Lei frowned. His reputation as Cloudy Sky Sword Immortal wasn't just for show. He had fought for it. The number of universe-level and Eon-level Yuan Ku that had died in Liu Lei's hands had reached a total of 4. This was a very impressive achievement among all the immortal sword-level swordbearers. What if it's not just Loki? If Thunder God Thor, War God Tyr, or even the 3 goddesses of fate come, let me ask you, can one person defeat them? Zhu Wudao questioned Liu Lei again. How is that possible? Why would they all appear in Fort Yuyang? If they really came, wouldn't that mean that they're declaring war on Yuzhang City? At this point, Liu Lei's voice paused. You're saying that they're going to declare war on us? A great invasion is coming? Although I'm not sure, from what Updraft said just now, the war is about to begin. The great invasion is coming again. The flesh on Zhu Wudao's face was squeezed together, forming many wrinkles. Otherwise, why would the Western divine system, whose territory is tens of thousands of kilometers away from us, cross such a long distance to attack our Yuyang fortress? They even took the risk of becoming enemies with the free metropolis and forced the perverted Sunspot to help them teleport. More importantly, Tear of Updraft said that the troops in Fort Yuyang are still increasing. If this isn't to deal with the entire Yuzhang City, then what is it for? That's not necessarily true. Maybe the freemen are lying to us. They're just putting on an act. The pleated sword spirit said, unconvinced. If they're just fooling us, it'll be even worse. I believe that the 30 swordbearers must be surrounded by an inescapable net, waiting for us to stupidly send out reinforcements to rescue them. Zhu Wudao swung his hand, showing his determination. Sacrificing the lives of 6 people to save 1 person is something only idiotic Americans would do. I, Sword Immortal Baiju, will never do such a thing in my lifetime. The sacrifice of 6 people to save 1 person that Zhu Wudao was referring to was the movie Saving Private Ryan from before the Great Apocalypse. This CD, which was found in the ruins, became a precious record for humans to understand the era before the Great Apocalypse. However, at that time, The longevity Gendi had given the movie its harshest criticism. Sacrificing 6 people for 1 person is the stupidest trade in the world. If anyone dares to do such a trade in the future, he or she will be a traitor to humanity. Just because of that one sentence from the Sword Emperor Longevity, the story of this movie had become the target of collective criticism from all of humanity. Indeed, 6 swordbearers for 1 swordbearer. Human swordbearers were not like soldiers on the battlefield. Soldiers only needed to issue a mobilization order to continuously mobilize millions of people, which were equivalent to consumables. However, the swordbearers were too precious. Every death of a swordbearer meant 1 less precious force. Not to mention 6 for 1, even 6 for 5 was impossible. The fate of Yuzhang City is in our hands this time. I must ensure that all our forces are concentrated in Yuzhang City. Only by doing so can we protect Yuzhang City. As for those swordbearers who are waiting for our rescue, I can only apologize to them. Their heroic deeds will be engraved on stone tablets in the future. Zhu Wudao's words were very serious and ruthless. The lives of more than 30 swordbearers were completely sacrificed because of his words. Hehe, what a benevolent chairman of the Sword Committee. My brothers haven't even died yet, but you've already begun to prepare stone tablets for them. To have such a chairman of the Sword Committee, I, the Pleated Sword, am truly blessed. The Pleated Sword Spirit's words were very calm, but the suppressed anger within could not be hidden from anyone. All right, Lord Baiju, I can understand that you're doing this for Yuzhang City. Please understand me as well. Even if I'm alone, I'll save my brothers. After saying that, the Pleated Sword Spirit turned around and left the conference room to save his brothers. Brainless fool. Zhu Wudao's face darkened. A solid sword aura shot out from his body and turned into chains that instantly bound the Pleated Sword Spirit's body. The Pleated Sword Spirit lost his balance and fell to the ground, splattering blood all over the floor. Let me go. Let me go. The Pleated Sword Spirit struggled with all his might. However, he was seriously injured and the sword essence in his body had been depleted. He could not resist Zhu Wudao's imprisonment at all. Guards, bring the Pleated Sword Spirit to the hospital and give him 10 times the sedative. Before I give the order, let him lie in the medical chamber and sleep forever. Do you understand? Zhu Wudao said to his 2 subordinates who had walked in. The 2 subordinates saluted, lifted the struggling Pleated Sword Spirit, and left the conference room. Old man, are you dissatisfied with how I've dealt with him? Liu Lei had witnessed the entire process of how Zhu Wudao dealt with the Pleated Sword Spirit. There was a faint smile on his face, or perhaps it was a mocking smile, or a bitter smile, or a sad smile. No, if I were you, I would have done the same. Liu Lei shook his head. I'm just a little touched. Since when did Yuzhang City fall to the point where even its own people can't save them? If the Terminator Gendi was still alive, Yuzhang City would have gone to save these 30 poor fellows even if they had to sacrifice everything they had. The Terminator Gendi was the previous Gendi born in Yuzhang City. When Liu Lei was still a 14-year-old child, the Terminator Gendi had already ascended to immortality. Since then, there had been no Gendi in Yuzhang City for more than 70 years. If I were Gendi, I could take back the entire Yang fortress all by myself. I wouldn't give up on those children. Zhu Wudao smiled bitterly. Unfortunately, this is just an if. Yuzhang City may be facing a life-and-death situation. I can't act on impulse. I have to remain absolutely calm. Yes, it's because of your calmness that I took the initiative to give up when I was fighting for the position of the Sword Committee chairman. I knew that I would never have your calmness, Liu Lei said with a face full of memories. Those days were so nostalgic. If I could, I would rather be like you and stay in the Sword Pavilion. I don't want to be tortured by these painful things for the rest of my life. Zhu Wudao let out a long sigh. I'm going to draft an order. Come along. You decide. I have no objections, Liu Lei said. But I'm going to issue the Sword Committee Chairman's order. You're responsible for recording it. Bat understands. Yuzhang City Chairman's Order number 869 is being recorded. Please announce the order, an electronic voice said in the room. Pass down my order. The entire Yuzhong city is on red alert. Abandon all the beacon towers outside the absolute safety zone. Gather the sword bearers who leave the beacon towers to the large fortress with the quantum transmission array to monitor the surroundings of Yuzhong city. Withdraw all the people in the Miling mountain range. Sword bearers, ordinary people, and miners, all retreat to Yuzhong city. Leave a small team to guard the quantum transmission array. Once there is any danger, this team can immediately retreat to Yuzhong city without asking for permission. All the equipment that can be taken away will be taken away, and those that can't be taken away will be left there. If it's destroyed, then so be it. We can rebuild it in the future. Oh, by the way, the same goes for the sword bearers in the fortress. Once they discover that Yuan Ku is launching a large-scale attack and the fortress can't defend, immediately retreat through the quantum transmission array without asking for permission. Work outside the absolute safety zone as usual, but everyone must maintain a smooth communication channel. You are not allowed to leave the area within 10 kilometers of your camp. Once you receive the warning of Yuan Ku's attack, immediately retreat. Immediately retreat by car back to Yuzhong city. Send out all the large heavy-duty vehicles to transport all the various resources we have stored outside the city back to Yuzhong city. The preparations for this attack are much greater than the previous two. This time, it is very likely to become a tug-of-war. We must ensure that the city has enough resources to withstand it. Immediately start a news control. News of the attack must only be known by the higher-ups. We must strictly keep it a secret from the civilians. We cannot let the city fall into chaos. Oh, no, our actions are too obvious. There are many strange people among the civilians. They will not let go of this opportunity to create chaos. Still, tell them that the attack is imminent, but this is a completely controllable attack. Yuzhong city is absolutely safe. Also, send out a recall order. Immediately recall all the sword bearers who are adventuring outside. Tell them not to go in the direction of Yuyang. That place is already under Yuan Ku's control. Tell them to take a detour and return to Yuzhong city from the southeast. Send a distress signal to the other 7 cities, especially Yangjing city. Yuzhong city is finished. It's best to let them send their own immortal sword bearers over to support us. Then, contact Wu Zhongshifang alone. Tell him that he can return the favor now. Note that the Eagle Cat Sword Spirits team does not need to return. Finally, reopen all the underground shelters. Start cleaning up the shelters' sanitation. Check the shelters' ventilation and nutrient storage. It's been 12 years. It's time to reopen the shelters again. Chapter 368. Changyang Mountain was located in Shihe County, Longnan City, Gansu Province before the Great Calamity. After the Great Calamity, Changyang Mountain was under the jurisdiction of Yuzhong City, but it didn't really matter. It was only a nominal jurisdiction. When Yangjing City had just been established and Yuzhong City was still nowhere to be seen, Yangjing City had jurisdiction over the vast territories of Huaxia, Fusang, Central Asia, Siberia, Southeast Asia, India, and Australia. But in fact, it was already difficult for Yangjing City to control the area within a few hundred kilometers around it. Those territories were only controlled in name. When Yuzhong City was established, Zhetian Zhendi went to the Sword Committee of Yangjing City to discuss the issue of territory. Chen Shuang Zhendi drew a line along the central axis of Huaxia and gave the area south of the line to Yuzhong City. He even asked Zhetian Zhendi if it was enough. If it wasn't enough, he could also give Siberia to Zhetian Zhendi. All in all, there was no dispute between the base cities regarding the nominal territory. They couldn't even control the land around their own cities, let alone territories thousands of kilometers away. After traveling along the broken highway for 4 days, Guhan's hoverbus finally arrived near Changyang Mountain. They met some Yuan Ku along the way, and they were all assigned to Guhan, Songafei, and Ku Rokin as missions. In less than 10 minutes, they were all killed by Guhan and the others. They also met a team of sword-bearers who were on an adventure. They were a team of sword-bearers from Yangjing City. There were 25 people in total, and they had been on an adventure for almost half a year. After chatting with them, They learned that their goal was to destroy a stronghold of the Martyr's Palace. It was said that there was a natural sword lady left in Yuan Ku's hands in that stronghold. They wanted to take the sword lady back. However, the team had already lost 5 sword bearers before they could find the stronghold. Therefore, the team leader already had the intention to retreat. He planned to return to Yangjing City after eliminating the Yuan Ku in the area. After that, Guhan didn't meet any sword bearers anymore. He didn't meet any of them even when he reached his destination. Brother Tianyuan, long time no see. Seeing Shu Tianyuan jump down from the tree, Guhan couldn't help but size up this son of an aristocratic family that he hadn't seen for almost 2 weeks. The other party's clothes were neat and tidy, and his face was glowing. He did not look like a guy who had been hiding in the jungle for 2 weeks. However, this was not strange. As long as Shu Tianyuan did not lose his dimensional pocket, he would never lack tools to take care of himself. Brother Guhan, I didn't expect to see you here. Ling didn't choose the wrong person. Shu Tianyuan cupped his fist and smiled at Guhan. Ling. Song Ifei's ears twitched. This name sounded like a girl's name. Could it be that there was something that Song Ifei did not know? Thinking about it carefully, Song Ifei really did not know about the existence of Liuonian Ling. There were a few times when he met with Guhan, but Liuonian Ling was not by Guhan's side. Although Ju Wudao knew something about Guhan and Liuonian Ling, he would not tell Song Ifei about it. Therefore, this was the first time that Song Ifei heard the name Ling. Oh, you don't know, but Ling is Mr. Guhan's girlfriend. Ling was the one who discovered the trial field. However, Ling was trapped in the trial field, and Brother Guhan rushed here to save Ling. This is really touching. Shu Tianyuan looked like he was touched. You have a girlfriend. Song Ifei suddenly raised his voice by several pitches. Jiyu Han, you're good. You hid it well. Congratulations. Yi Wenjun swore that Song Ifei wasn't moved at all. That's right, I'm here to save Linlin. Guhan's answer was clever. He only said that he was there to save Liuonian Ling, but he did not answer the crucial question of whether Liuonian Ling was his girlfriend. All right, you ungrateful little guy. Now is not the time for you to be jealous. The eagle cat sword spirit couldn't stand it anymore. The sword wielder who couldn't stand being abused directly defined Song Ifei as someone who was jealous. Instantly, Song Ifei shut his mouth. He didn't want to talk about Linlin anymore. What a joke, who was jealous? Shu Tianyuan, right? The descendant of the Confucian family. The spirit of the eagle cat nodded. Let me ask you, how is the situation? Have the people from the other base cities arrived? The team from Yangjing has arrived. They are resting in the temporary camp. As for the other base cities, there is no news yet, Shu Tianyuan answered politely. He is the descendant of the Confucian family. Yi Wenjun, who was standing behind Jiyu Han, carefully sized up Shu Tianyuan and couldn't help but feel a sense of shame in her heart. Yi Wenjun was also a descendant of the Jendi family. He was also the descendant of the invincible Zhe Jendi, who had established the Yuzhang base city. Strictly speaking, Yi Wenjun's bloodline was nobler than Shu Tianyuan's. At the very least, Confucian Jendi would never be able to defeat Zhe Jendi. Besides, Confucian Jendi did not leave behind a base city that could bring fortune to the world. While Yi Wenjun was thinking about these things, Shu Tianyuan and the spirit of the eagle cat had finished their conversation. Shu Tianyuan turned around, saluted the others in a graceful manner, and then introduced himself with a smile. I am Shu Tianyuan, the descendant of the Confucian family. It is my pleasure to meet the geniuses and young heroes of Yuzhang City. I wonder if I would be honored to make friends with you all. As expected of a descendant of the Confucian family, every word and action was well-mannered. Ku Rokin, nice to meet you. Ku Rokin was the first to speak. After introducing himself, this Chunibya teenager turned his nose up in the air and ignored Shu Tianyuan, as if Shu Tianyuan was some insignificant nobody. Oh, it is the son of Sword Immortal Baiju. My apologies, Shu Tianyuan said politely and ignored Ku Rokin. Although the son of a Sword Immortal sounded impressive, it was nothing compared to his status as the descendant of the Confucian family. Once Sword Immortal Baiju passed away, Ku Rokin would be nothing to him. Then, Shu Tianyuan looked at Guhan. Guhan smiled and didn't say anything. He and Shu Tianyuan already knew each other, so there was nothing for him to introduce. Then, Song Ifei took the initiative to speak. She imitated Shu Tianyuan and cupped her fists. Song Ifei, I used to be a doctor. Recently, I got lucky and became a sword wielder. I'm ashamed that I don't have much to show. So it's Miss Yifei. Miss Yifei, don't belittle yourself. I can sense an unusual power from Miss Yifei. Miss Yifei will definitely be able to gain something in the trial field. After Song Ifei finished her self-introduction, only Yi Wenjun was left. Yi Wenjun took a deep breath and made a gesture that looked a bit strange, but naturally gave off a noble and elegant aura of a complex etiquette. I am Yuzhang City's Shrouding Heaven family's 16th generation descendant, Yi Wenjun. May I ask how the descendant of the Confucian family is doing? It seemed like Yi Wenjun had brought out the etiquette of the Jendi family. In a certain era, some of the family heads of the Jendi family felt good about themselves. In order to highlight their status as part of the Jendi family, they came up with a set of etiquette for the Jendi family to interact with each other. Then, this set of etiquette quickly spread among all the Jendi families. Back then, the Shrouding Heaven family was the most proactive one. After losing their strength, they could only rely on these complicated etiquettes to show their status as part of the Jendi family. However, it was worth mentioning that the Liu Nian family had never cared about these etiquettes. Their descendants had always done whatever they wanted, and they deeply hated etiquette. It was said that one family head privately said that only those rotten families would care about these meaningless etiquettes. Because of their deep relationship with the Liu Nian family, the Confucian family had also been influenced by the Liu Nian family. They also didn't care about this etiquette. Although Shu Tianyuan knew about these etiquettes and had learned some of them, he had basically forgotten most of them. If you asked him to use the standard etiquette to reply to Yi Wenjun's etiquette, then sorry, Shu Tianyuan couldn't do it. Shu Tianyuan took the initiative to grab Yi Wenjun's hand and excitedly said, I didn't expect to meet the descendant of the Shrouding Heaven family here. This is truly surprising. The Shrouding Heaven family hasn't interacted with other families in over 200 years. I didn't expect to meet you today. It's truly my honor. Very good. This way, I won't have to be embarrassed about not knowing etiquette. Shu Tianyuan did it because he was excited. But then again, the Shrouding Heaven family really hadn't appeared in the various family gatherings and conferences for a long time. The reason was very simple. They couldn't afford to lose face. Back then, the Heaven Shrouding family's laughable fight for the position of family leader had caused quite a commotion, and all of the Sword Emperor families knew about it. As such, the Heaven Shrouding family became the laughingstock of the circle, and the elders of the family used it to educate the younger generation. There was a saying that went, families can't cover the sky too much. Don't misunderstand, this wasn't to criticize the families for being overbearing. It was to educate their descendants that they couldn't live like the Shrouding Heaven family. Adding on the fact that the Shrouding Heaven family didn't have a single famed sword-bearer, they didn't have the face to attend any conferences. A few generations of family heads were thick-skinned and wanted to attend the conference to get some benefits. In the end, they were stopped by Yuzhang City. What a joke. If other families went to lose face, then so be it. If the founder of Yuzhang City, the descendant of the Shrouding Heaven Jendi family, lost face, then the entire Yuzhang City would lose face. Therefore, it was true that the various families hadn't seen the descendant of the Shrouding Heaven family for over 200 years. If Yi Wenjun hadn't mentioned it, Shu Tianyuan would have almost forgotten about the existence of the Shrouding Heaven family. Chapter 369. Why am I so unlucky? Xiao Ya, who was lying on Wen Meiyun's bed, kept complaining. It wasn't easy for her to convince Guogua to help her fake a fall from a building and break her legs. She finally succeeded in living in Guhan's house, but she didn't expect that on the morning she moved in, Guhan would bring all the family members except for her mother out for a mission. This made Long Xiaoya, who was filled with joy and wanted to become a beautiful canary, extremely depressed and regretful. If she had known that this would happen, she wouldn't have gone to create the accident. In order to deceive Wen Meiyun and Guhan, she really jumped from the third floor, but she wrapped a thick layer of sponge on her head to prevent it from breaking. The pain brought by the fracture was also worth it. Heaven had pity on her. She, Xiao Ya, had put in a lot of effort for this plan. In the end, she was happy for nothing and broke both her legs. There was nothing more tragic than this in the world. Thinking of this, Long Xiaoya couldn't help but cry silently. What was this? Why did all kinds of bad things happen to me? Forget it, I'll just watch the television. Since the main benefits were gone, the remaining secondary benefits couldn't be lost. This house was really not bad. After sleeping in Guoguo's house for a month and smelling the stench for a month, it wasn't easy to live in such a good environment. No matter what, she had to enjoy it to the fullest. Especially the television. At Guoguo's place, she could only watch the television through her personal terminal. This wasn't a comfortable thing, especially when the soundproofing of the hundreds of capsules were all watching the television through the personal terminal. The sound of hundreds of channels converging together was enough to make anyone lose interest in watching the television. Therefore, to be able to watch her favorite television in a spacious, quiet, and comfortable room was the only thing that could make Xiao Ya, who had broken both her legs, feel happy. However, it seemed that some people didn't want Xiao Ya to be happy. Xiao Ya, who was engrossed in watching the latest popular TV series, Sword Immortal Falls in Love with Me, suddenly noticed that the TV screen shook, and then it entered a state of static. In the upper right corner of the screen, there was a prompt indicating that some signal was switching. Seriously, 1,000 years had passed. Why was there still nothing but static when there was no signal on the television? It seemed that this was the suggestion of the Historical Research Committee, indicating that they wanted to restore history. The snowflakes were full of beauty, and it was easier for people to be intoxicated. It felt very powerful. Damn it. I haven't even seen how green tea hooked up with Lord Celestial Sword and Fairy. Why is she gone? Xiao Ya muttered in dissatisfaction. She had wanted to learn the female lead's flirting skills, but now she couldn't. By the way, there was a rumor on the internet that the script of this phenomenal TV series with a viewership rating of 7% was originally called His Majesty Jendi Falls in Love with Me. Unfortunately, it was rejected by the SARFT. The reason was very righteous. After the apocalypse, Jendi is not allowed to fall in love with someone other than his first wife. But soon, the screen returned to normal, but the original TV drama turned into a studio. A dignified and beautiful famous female host faced the camera solemnly with a serious expression. F*CK, who wants to watch the news? I want to change the channel. A young girl like Xiao Ya naturally had no interest in news programs. She decisively used the remote control to change the channel, only to find that the other channel was broadcasting the same news. Xiao Ya couldn't believe it. She quickly changed the channel, only to find that the television seemed to be dominated by this news. No matter which channel it was broadcasting the female host's image. I'm not watching anymore. That's good enough, right? Xiao Ya was about to turn off the television, cover her head in anger, and sleep. But the next moment, her hand that was holding the remote control loosened. Latest news. The identity of the shameful Yuan Ku who launched the sneak attack on our Fort Yeyang has been confirmed. He is Yuan Ku from the Western Beast Camp. These despicable Yuan Ku didn't have the courage to attack our great, brave, and fearless swordsman from the front. He only dared to launch a sneak attack on us from behind. Caught off guard, although the brave swordsmen tried their best to resist, they were unable to defend against the despicable sneak attack. As a result, the Fort Yeyang fell. Fortunately, most of our sword bearers have returned safely. More than 100 sword bearers have left their lives on that hot-blooded land forever, composing an impassioned heroic hymn. Today, the Council and the Sword Committee jointly made an announcement to inform our dear audience, civilians, and citizens. After the swordsmen risked their lives to investigate, they discovered that the number of Yuan Ku in the Fort Yeyang is increasing. It is very likely that they will launch a despicable attack on Yuzhang City. Everyone, don't get too excited. The chairman of the Sword Committee, Sword Immortal Ju Wudao, told the reporters that according to the information, the scale of this attack is expected to be smaller than the previous ones. Regardless of whether it is the number of Yuan Ku or the level of Yuan Ku, They have always ranked at the bottom of the list. Under the leadership of Sword Immortal Ju Wudao, the Sword Committee, and the Council, Yuzhong City has the confidence, strength, and willpower to block this attack outside the dimensional barrier. Yuzhong City's defenses will not be breached. Everyone can rest assured and stay at home, waiting for news of victory. During this time, if someone tries to create trouble, deceive the public, and cause chaos. Furthermore, if they take the opportunity to rob, rape, smash, loot, and burn, they will be seeking their own deaths. The Council has already issued several opinions on cracking down on violent crimes this morning, which clearly states that once violent crimes such as vandalism, robbery, and arson are found, the police have the right to immediately open fire and kill the criminal. Please do not take chances. Also, as a precaution, all the shelters have been opened and tidied up. If there is an accident, please use the emergency slides to enter the shelters in an orderly manner. Now, we will broadcast the list of the dead or missing sword bearers and commoners in the Yeyang Fortress. If you have family or loved ones in the Yeyang Fortress, you can check the list for the latest news. You can also log on to our website to make inquiries. Mom, come take a look, something big has happened. Xiao Wei called out loudly. Soon, when Maiyun, who was wearing an apron, came into the room. She asked anxiously, "What's wrong, Xiao Wei? What happened? Did you hit your foot on something just now?" What a pitiful parent. When Meiyun's thoughts were all on Xiaoya's legs. "No, my legs are fine. It's news, it's news." Xiao Wei immediately told Wen Maiyun everything that had just been reported on the news. When Meiyun's beautiful face paled in fright. These two really hadn't gone out for a whole day. Whenever they went out, they would hear everyone discussing the news of Fort Yuyang's fall. "What should we do, Xiao Wei? The big attack is coming again. Xiao Wei, Mom will definitely protect you." When Maiyun said incoherently, "Mom, what are you worried about? We are in the core area. Even if the big attack comes, it will be the people in the common areas who are unlucky. What does it have to do with our core area? Our core area is protected by 2 layers of dimensional barriers. In history, the core area has only been breached once. We are 95% safe. What are you afraid of?" "That's right, Mom and Xiao Wei are already in the core area." When Maiyun cried tears of joy. "That's great, Xiao Wei, we are in the core area." "Mom, don't cry. Although we are in the core area now, things are still uncertain. You told me before that Sir Guhan was going to Gansu province. Our teacher said that if he wanted to go to the west, he would definitely pass by the Yeyang Fortress. It seems like Mr. Guhan left 3 days ago. Maybe he was in the Yuyang Fort yesterday. Quickly check if Mr. Guhan is in the list of casualties. Master Guhan might be inside Fort Yuyang." When Meiyun's smile didn't last for more than a few seconds before she started to cry again. "Why is it like this? Lord Guhan was such a good person, he treated her so well. How could he be in the Yuyang stronghold? If he leaves, what are we going to do?" That's why I said, "Mother, quickly check if Lord Guhan's name is on that list. Go to the Council's official website. There's a list there. Computer. But Xiaoya, Mommy doesn't know how to use a computer." Well, when Maiyun was also a rare animal in the world. In this era where every family had a computer and everyone had been surfing the internet since young, when Maiyun was a rare animal in the world. In this era, there was actually someone like Wen Maiyun who didn't know how to surf the internet even though she was in her 30s. "It's okay, Xiaoya knows how to surf the internet. Mommy, carry Xiaoya to Lord Guhan's computer." "Xiaoya will go to the website and check," Xiaoya said anxiously. "Go to Lord Guhan's computer?" When Maiyun hesitated. "But Lord Guhan said that he doesn't allow us to touch his computer." "Mom, what time is it? We are worried about Lord Jiyuhan. Even if Lord Guhan finds out, he won't be angry with us." "Mommy, quickly carry me there." Under Xiaoya's constant persuasion, when Maiyun, who was worried about Guhan's safety, couldn't convince Xiaoya in the end. She brought Xiaoya to Guhan's room and turned on Guhan's computer to access the Council's official website. Xiaoya quickly downloaded the name list from the computer. Then, when Mayun looked through the names one by one, after confirming that Guhan's name wasn't on the list of missing or dead swordsmen, she heaved a sigh of relief. That's great, Mommy, Lord Guhan is fine. Xiao Yue stuck close to her mom's ear and said while biting her mom's ear, Mom, watching TV is so boring. Can you let Xiao Yue go online for a while? Xiao Yue won't do anything else. I'll just go on my QQ and chat with my classmates for a while. You don't know, when Xiaoya's classmates heard that Xiaoya was injured, they were all very concerned about her and left many messages on QQ. If Xiaoya didn't reply to them, how bad would that be? How could Xiaoya go to school with them in the future and get along with them? Not getting along well with her classmates. When Mayun couldn't reject this reason at all. A mother definitely wouldn't want her daughter to be isolated in school. She could only nod and promise Xiaoya that she could only surf the internet for half an hour at most. Don't worry, Mommy. I don't need half an hour. 20 minutes will be enough. Seeing when Mayun leave Guhan's room, Xiaoya smiled as if her scheme had succeeded. She didn't know what she was planning in her heart. Chapter 370. In a small temporary camp, Guhan and the others met the people of Yangjing City who had arrived earlier. There were a lot of sword bearers from Yangjing City, about a dozen of them. Most of them were good-looking, arrogant, and modest on the surface, but actually disdainful. When they saw that Yuzhang City had only sent 4 little cats and puppies, they couldn't help but begin to despise them. They muttered in their hearts, sure enough, Yuzhang City has declined and can't produce any talents. The future of mankind still depends on us, Yangjing City, and so on. You can't blame these sword bearers for thinking like this, because since ancient times, except for a few periods, the strongest fighting force of mankind has always come from Yangjing City. For example, now, Hao Qianjendi of Yangjing City was the cornerstone of suppressing the entire human world. Without Hao Qianjendi, only Long Shejendi was left, and the days of mankind would instantly become precarious. Eagle Cat, long time no see. After so many years, your appearance still hasn't changed. From the camp came a middle-aged man with a majestic gait. Although this man was nearly middle-aged, his skin was still tight and smooth, like that of a young man. In other words, he looked like a young man in his 20s. However, he had an extraordinary aura about him, one that looked down on the world with disdain. To be able to have such an aura, he had to be at least a spirit sword level sword wielder like the Eagle Cat sword spirit. And among all the spirit sword bearers in this generation, none of them was younger than 30 years old. Mystery mi, it's actually you. When Eagle Cat saw the man clearly, he was shocked. He didn't expect that the leader of Yangjing City was actually Mystery mi sword spirit. I don't know if everyone still remembers Mystery mi sword spirit, the one who made the dean of Yuzhang University, Tiger Raw sword spirit, admit defeat, and made the outstanding Dragon Spring sword spirit feel ashamed of his inferiority. He is known as the #1 sword master, Mystery mi sword spirit. He is Mystery mi sword spirit. The most powerful sword master, Mystery mi sword spirit. Guhan was also taken aback. For a long time, if Guhan was most concerned about the spirit sword level sword holder, then it must be the confusion sword spirit. As a fellow sword master, the Chaos Sword Spirit had defeated almost all the Sword Masters who had been issued a Sword Master certificate by the Sword Master Association. Even the 3 immortal Sword Masters were no match for the Chaos Sword Spirit in a competition of pure sword techniques. Therefore, the Chaos Sword Spirit was undoubtedly the strongest among the Sword Masters. At the same time, Huarami was also the strongest among all the Spirit Sword tier sword bearers, and was known as the strongest candidate for the next Sword Immortal. Guhan had always wanted to compete with the Confusion Sword Spirit in swordsmanship. He wanted to see where the limits of his swordsmanship were and whether he could compete with the #1 swordsman in the world. However, given Guhan's status back then, it was impossible for him to even glance at the sword spirit from afar, let alone compete with it. Originally, Guhan thought that he would only have the opportunity to see the Confusion Sword Spirit in the 8 Academy Assembly. Unexpectedly, he met the Confusion Sword Spirit in advance in this Changyang Mountain. In addition to Guhan, the most excited one was Ku Rokin. In other words, Ku Rokin should be more excited than Guhan. Ku Rokin had been holding the hilt of the sword in his hand, and his eyes were full of hunger. Well, it was indeed the feeling of hunger. In addition, Song Ifei and Yi Wenjun did not seem so excited. They were not sword masters, and they were not interested in the title of the number 1 sword master of the Confusion Sword Spirit. At most, they were a little excited about the title of the number 1 spirit sword level sword holder. Mystery am I, why are you here? Although the matter of Chongyang Mountain is very important, there is no need for Yangjing City to send you here, right? The Eagle Cat Sword Spirit said confusedly. It could be seen that the Eagle Cat Sword Spirit respected the Confusion Sword Spirit very much, which was due to the absolute strength of the Confusion Sword Spirit. No, Eagle Cat, you are wrong. Since when can Yangjing City command me? The Confusion Sword Spirit smiled slightly. This is what I want to come here. The fame of the Heaven-Shrouding Sword Emperor has left Hurmi in awe. To be able to see the ruins of the Heaven-Shrouding Sword Emperor, no matter how small the matter is, Hurmi will definitely not miss it. All the Spirit Sword level sword holders knew that the Confusion Sword Spirit was a fan of Zhetian Jendi and admired Zhetian Jendi very much. Once, she almost changed swordsmanship and became a sword holder belonging to Yuzhang City. However, because of the strong opposition of the Confusion Sword Spirit's family and Yangjing City, this idea was never achieved. It was said that the Confusion Sword Spirit had collected thousands of items used by Zhetian Jendi, traces left behind, manuscripts and so on. There were also all kinds of books, information, videos, biographies, and so on. In short, the Confusion Sword Spirit could be said to be the strongest diehard fan of Zhetian Jendi. It was said that the reason why he was determined to become the Swordmaster was because he was influenced by Zhetian Jendi's identity. Then, his talent exploded, and he became the strongest Swordmaster. You still haven't changed. You still admire Zhetian Jendi so much. To be honest, I don't think your swordsmanship is inferior to Zhetian Jendi, the Eagle Cat Sword Spirit said sincerely. He had once fought side by side with the Confusion Sword Spirit and had seen the Confusion Sword Spirit fight with his own eyes. He also admired the Confusion Sword Spirit's outstanding swordsmanship. He really felt that there was no one in this world who had better swordsmanship than the Confusion Sword Spirit. Eagle Cat, you're wrong. Compared to Zhetian Jendi, my swordsmanship is like comparing the stars to the moon. It's not even worth mentioning. The Confusion Sword Spirit shook his head. His eyes were filled with admiration for Zhetian Jendi. Yi Wenjun, who stood beside Yi Wenjun, was very touched. The Heaven-Shrouding Sword Emperor was Yi Wenjun's ancestor. Yi Wenjun's favorable impression of the mystic sword spirit instantly increased by several dozen points when she heard the extremely powerful mystic sword spirit worship its ancestor. Zhetian Jendi was something that happened 700 years ago. Who knows what happened 700 years ago? The Eagle Cat Sword Spirit still maintained his opinion. He didn't think that the Confusion Sword Spirit's swordsmanship was inferior to Zhetian Jendi. You're wrong, Eagle Cat. Let's not talk about Zhetian Jendi from 700 years ago. Even now, he still has swordsmanship that I, the Confusion Sword Spirit, can't defeat. The Confusion Sword Spirit smiled bitterly. Then, he revealed a shocking piece of news. The Confusion Sword Spirit had been defeated, and defeated by pure swordsmanship. You lost. The Eagle Cat Sword Spirit asked in disbelief. I lost, the Bumi Sword Spirit replied with a nod. He added, in pure swordsmanship, we both fought with wooden swords. I lost completely. I accept my defeat. The Eagle Cat Sword Spirit was silent for a long time. Was it a human or Yuan Ku who defeated you? What was his name? It was Yuan Ku. The Confusion Sword Spirit's flesh trembled. That day I went to the ancient battlefield in the Alps, I met a green-robed Yuan Ku. He was dressed in ancient clothes, and had a sage-like demeanor. He must be Yuan Ku from the Eastern Celestial Court. Later on, when I sparred with him in swordsmanship, I didn't even last more than 100 moves before I lost. In terms of swordsmanship alone, I'm afraid that even 5 of me added together wouldn't be able to match up to him. To be able to defeat you within 100 moves, Confusion Sword Spirit, you must be joking. The Eagle Cat Sword Spirit was completely dumbfounded. If the confusion sword spirit couldn't last 100 moves, then wouldn't he be finished in 10 moves? You know, Eagle Cat, I never joke. The confusion sword spirit said seriously, but the strange thing is, I looked up all the information on Yuan Ku, but I couldn't find any information on this Yuan Ku. I suspect that he might be the Yuan Ku who came to this world through the dimensional rift recently. His strength is at least at the universe-class Yuan Ku. He might even be a universe-class Yuan Ku. Humans are in an even more dangerous situation. What's this Yuan Ku's name? Let me see if there's any information on this person in our Yuzhong City's database, the Eagle Cat Sword Spirit said immediately. The addition of a universe-class Yuan Ku to Yuan Ku's camp was a major matter that had to be reported to the Sword Council. After he defeated me, he disappeared and didn't leave his name. However, I found this on the ground. The confusion sword spirit took out a palm-sized green flower from the dimensional space. What is this? It looks like a lotus flower, but is there a green one in a lotus flower? The Eagle Cat Sword Spirit bent down and carefully observed the green lotus flower in the confusion sword spirit's hand. Unbeknownst to it, Guhan had become very excited. A green lotus flower. Wasn't it the green lotus in short? Upon seeing this green lotus, Guhan naturally thought of his father and the green lotus sword immortal that Yi Qing had mentioned. A green lotus flower, an expert swordsman, an outstanding swordsman, and a Yuan Yang that could never die. All of these factors combined together indicated that the Yuan Yang that left behind this green lotus flower was very likely the green lotus sword immortal that Ji Yuhan was looking for. Guhan didn't care about the difference in status between him and the confusion sword spirit. He wanted to directly ask where he met the owner of this green lotus flower. However, before Guhan could speak, Yi Wenjun spoke first. I know. I remember now. Lord Huarmai, it's very likely that the person you met was the green lotus sword fairy mentioned by our ancestor. Yi Wenjun said excitedly. Finally, there was a topic that he could interrupt. If he could help the confusion sword spirit, then the revival of the Yi family would be even easier. Your ancestor has seen this Yuan Ku. As expected, the confusion sword spirit was completely captivated by Yi Wenjun's words. Guhan also wisely kept his mouth shut. He didn't expect Yi Wenjun to know about the green lotus sword immortal. Our ancestor and her retainer once said that in this world, when it comes to swordsmanship, there are 3.5 people that she can't beat. Yi Wenjun spoke with great familiarity. The retainer he mentioned was Uncle Huang's ancestor, and this conversation was naturally between Zhetian Jiendi and Uncle Huang. That was why such important information wasn't left in the Yi family's archives. Instead, it was passed down by the Huang family's descendants. In the end, Uncle Huang told it to Yi Wenjun as a bedtime story. Among these 3.5 people, the other half is the green lotus sword immortal. The ancestor said that the Green Lotus Sword Immortal's sword art is a sword art that only the immortals of poetry can comprehend and use. The poems of poets have no limits, and the Green Lotus Sword Immortal's sword art also has no limits. Even the Milky Way of the 9 heavens can be split apart by his sword. Chapter 371. Splitting the Milky Way in one sword. Even a master like the mystic sword spirit couldn't help but click his tongue when he heard Yi Wenjun's words. This little guy's ancestor was so powerful, he could actually split the Milky Way in 2. Oh, no, it was the Green Lotus Sword Immortal who could split the Milky Way in one sword. Kid, who is your ancestor? You talk big, and only 3.5 people in the world are better at swordsmanship than him. Does your ancestor think he's the heaven-covering Jendi? Behind the mystic sword spirit, a disciple from an aristocratic family mocked. Although his mouth was foul, his eyes were very sharp. He could tell at a glance that Yi Wenjun didn't have any strength. His steps were light, his head was heavy, and his feet were light. Even the Sword Maiden was the most common man-made Sword Maiden. How could such a guy come to the trial left behind by the heaven-covering Jendi? It was really infuriating to compare oneself to others. He had to kill a large group of aristocratic family disciples to get this spot in Yangjing City. When this aristocratic family disciple saw that Yi Wenjun had gotten a spot with such trash strength, He was naturally very unhappy. He didn't hold back and directly began to mock Yi Wenjun. Speaking of which, Yuzhong City was indeed very weak. Apart from Yi Wenjun, there was no one else from the aristocratic families in Yuzhong City. Although there were far fewer aristocratic families in Yuzhong City than in Yangjing City, there were still 6 great Jendi aristocratic families. It was very interesting that the other 5 aristocratic families didn't join Yuzhong City's team. Was it because the other 5 aristocratic families in Yuzhong City didn't have any suitable sword-bearers? Or were the descendants of these aristocratic families stupid? Or was it because Liu Lei and Zhu Wudao didn't allow these aristocratic families to join the team? No matter which reason it was a very bad thing for Yuzhong City. Hearing the other party's mockery, Yi Wenjun's face turned green and then red. The person who mocked him thought that he had poked Yi Wenjun's sore spot, which was why his expression changed. He felt a lot better. Unbeknownst to him, Yi Wenjun was only considering whether or not he should reveal his identity. If he did, would this aristocratic family become angry and hate the heaven-covering family? Fortunately, someone immediately appeared to solve this problem for Yi Wenjun. Shu Tianyuan waddled over to the Scion's side and clapped him on the shoulder. "Brother Yuan Fang, you're really smart. How did you figure out that this young master Yi Wenjun is a descendant of Zetian Jendi? I'm impressed, truly impressed." "H, you're still guessing? I don't even need to think to know." "Wait, Shu Tianyuan, what did you say?" Only then did the Yuan Fang brothers react. They turned their heads around in a daze, looked at Shu Tianyuan and asked, "Tell me, what is this person's name? Whose descendant is he?" "His name is Yi Wenjun. Of course he's a descendant of Zetian Jendi Yi Qing. Didn't you just guess? Or with my toes?" It seemed that the relationship between Shu Tianyuan and this Yuan Fang must be very bad. Otherwise, he wouldn't ridicule this poor child like that. He's a descendant of Shroud Heaven Jendi? This Yuan Fang was completely dumbfounded. Was there anyone in this world who was more embarrassed than he was right now? Ridiculing someone's ancestor was only Zetian Jendi. In the end, this person's ancestor really was Zetian Jendi. What the hell was going on? This Yuan Fang instantly felt his face burning. He felt dizzy, as if everyone around him was laughing at him. He wanted to escape from this embarrassing place. But if he really escaped, he wouldn't be able to raise his head in the circle ever again. In that moment, this Yuan Fang was like an ant on a hot pan. He didn't know if he should leave or not. It was worse than killing him. "Hey, Zetian Jendi's descendant is here," one of the Scions said in a low voice. "Yeah, this person is actually a descendant of Zetian Jendi." Another Scion chimed in. "Strange. Shouldn't Zetian Jendi's descendant be in our circle? How come I've never seen him in our QQ group?" Hey, aristocratic families were really keeping up with the times. They actually had QQ groups. His strength looks so weak. Is he hiding his strength? A disciple from an aristocratic family who was concerned about his strength asked. "Maybe. I heard that Zetian Jendi is an expert at pretending to be a pig to eat tigers. Maybe they have some kind of skill for pretending to be a pig to eat tigers." In a short time, Yi Wenjun had exploded in the circle of aristocratic families in Yangjing City. The heaven-shrouding imperial sword was too strong, and the heaven-shrouding aristocratic family hadn't appeared in the circle of aristocratic families for a long time. Although the heaven-shrouding aristocratic family had become a laughingstock in the past, they had been dormant in Yuzhong City for more than 200 years. Now that they had suddenly appeared, they must be preparing to shock everyone. These discussions weren't hidden from Yi Wenjun. Instead, they were openly discussing, which made Yi Wenjun feel very awkward. The heaven-shrouding aristocratic family wasn't dormant at all. They were conserving their strength and preparing to shock everyone. The heaven-shrouding aristocratic family was just too terrible. They were so terrible that they didn't dare to appear in front of other aristocratic families. "All of you, shut up," the mystic sword spirit roared. Immediately, all the Scions who were discussing shut their mouths. The confusion sword spirit was almost the default sword-bearer of the immortal sword tier. He was famous among all the aristocratic families, and no one dared to disobey his words. Zetian Gendi's descendant, tell me, who are the other 3 people? The mystic sword spirit asked excitedly. He was a fan of Zetian Gendi. He admired Zetian Gendi very much. Naturally, he was also very curious about the 3 people Zetian Gendi mentioned were stronger than him. He wanted to know who it was that could make even Zetian Gendi sigh in admiration. Oh! Yi Wenjun was a little flustered, but he quickly composed himself and replied, the first one is His Majesty the Sword Ancestor. The Elder Ancestor said that the Sword Ancestor's swordsmanship is unparalleled and peerless. He is the only one in the world. In terms of swordsmanship alone, the 2 of them together may be able to rival the Sword Ancestor. Yes, His Majesty Kanzu turned the tide. He established our sword wielder's eternal legacy. He fought 8 desolate class Yuan Ku and didn't lose. Zetian Gendi really can't compare to His Majesty Kanzu. The Chaos Sword Spirit nodded. Perhaps the Chaos Sword Spirit would not be convinced if it was someone else, but it was a matter of course for the Sword Ancestor. In this world, there was no one who was more powerful than the Sword Ancestor. The others who were listening to Yi Wenjun, including the Eagle Cat Sword Spirit and Ku Rokin, nodded involuntarily. Kanzu being number 1 was the consensus of everyone. It was politically correct, and there was nothing to refute. What about the second person? The mystic sword spirit asked impatiently. The second person is the freelancer, the sword demon, Dugu seeking Bylos. When the elder ancestor was at the immortal sword tier, he once met Dugu seeking Bylos. Both of them sparred with the sword for 3 days and 3 nights. After that, the ancestors said that Dugu Chobai was not as good as him when using a soft sword. But when it came to other heavy swords and hard swords, he was not as good as Dugu Chobai. But in a real battle, both sides could not use soft swords, so the ancestors lost to Dugu Chobai. It's him. The crowd was in an uproar again. Dugu Chobai was a very unique Yuan Ku. Some said that he was the father of Dugu Chotian, who died in the hands of humans and Gendi. In short, this person was the same as Dugu Chotian, a unique Yuan Ku who did not participate in any killing of humans. But he also refused to join the free cities, so it was hard to define whether he was a freelancer or a Yuan Ku. Dugu Seeker of Defeat had not appeared for hundreds of years. During the period when Dugu Seeker of Defeat often appeared, very few people could really fight against him. It was said that he only fought against those who could possibly defeat him. Just like his name, Dugu Seeker of Defeat, only seeking one defeat. When Dugu Seeking Alos was active, he had fought with many sword masters. Without exception, all of them were defeated by Dugu Seeking Alos. There was no doubt that his swordsmanship was superb. Who would have thought that even the heaven-shrouding Sword Emperor would be defeated by Dugu Chobai? What about the other person? Who is the other person? Although the confused sword spirit was still skeptical about Dugu Chobai's ability to defeat Zetian Gendi, in general, the confused sword spirit believed it. Because it was the president of the Sword Master Association, it knew all kinds of information left by sword masters in the past 1,000 years. Most of the information was devoted to describing Dugu Seeker of Bai's prowess, as well as the admiration of those sword masters who had been defeated by Dugu Seeker of Bai's sword. Many of them even wanted to become Dugu Seeker of Bai's disciple, but Dugu Seeker of Bai didn't care about any of them, and left after defeating them. From the memories of Dugu Chobai, the confused sword spirit could feel Dugu Chobai's unimaginable strength. In fact, Kanzu and Dugu Chobai being able to defeat Zetian Gendi was also within the confused sword spirit's expectations. Yi Wenjun was just confirming it for him. But no matter how hard it tried, the confused sword spirit could not figure out who these 3 people were. Perhaps after Zetian Gendi, there were 1 or 2 sword masters who could theoretically defeat Zetian Gendi. But before Zetian Gendi, the confused sword spirit was sure that there was no third person who could defeat Zetian Gendi. The confused sword spirit could not figure out who these 3 people were. Therefore, the confused sword spirit became agitated and impatient. It held Yi Wenjun's hand tightly and asked. Its strength was so strong that it almost broke Yi Wenjun's wrist. Its master. Its master. Yi Wenjun was in pain and quickly said, it's the old ancestor's master. The old ancestor said that all his sword skills were taught by his master, and he only received 10% of his master's true skills. Therefore, his master is the strongest sword master in the world. Master. The confused sword spirit was stunned when it heard this answer. Zetian Gendi's master. This was a goddamn answer. The disciple's skills were not as good as the master, so it was only natural that Zetian Gendi's sword skills were not as good as his master's. However, 99% of the information and records regarding the heaven-shrouding sword emperor were in the hands of the confusion sword spirit. Not a single word was written in the information that the heaven-shrouding sword emperor had a master. Could it be that there was some great secret hidden in the historical records? Just like this training ground that suddenly appeared. Before this week, no one knew that Zetian Gendi had left such a training ground. Who is His Majesty Zetian's master? What's his name? The confused sword spirit stared into Yi Wenjun's eyes and asked. Looking into the confused sword spirit's eyes, Yi Wenjun shivered. He felt that if he could not answer this question, he would die a horrible death. I think he was called the Master of Toning. Yi Wenjun scratched his head and tried hard to remember. Yes, that's the name. Master of Toning? I've never heard of it. The confused sword spirit fell into deep thought. But Guhan, who was at the side, broke out in cold sweat. Toning. Isn't that the military governor? Chapter 372. Pack your things and set off with Chen Yuan. After resting in the temporary camp for less than an hour, the Bumi sword spirit summoned all the sword bearers from Yangjing and Yuzhang City and announced that they were ready to enter the trial ground. Sir, are we not going to wait for the people from the other 6 cities? One of the sword bearers from Yangjing City raised his hand and asked. Why should we wait for them? This is the trial ground built by Zhegendi of Huaxia. They can only blame themselves for being too far away from here. The eagle cat sword spirit grinned. The reason why Yangjing City spread the news to all 8 base cities was so that it would not destroy the atmosphere of human unity. However, if the people from the other cities were late because of the long journey, they could not blame Yuzhang City and Yangjing City for leaving first. Changyang Mountain was probably a place that had not been visited for hundreds of years. There were towering trees everywhere. Under Xu Tianyuan's guidance, the group took many turns and finally arrived at the entrance of a cave. This is the place. The trial ground is in here. Xu Tianyuan led everyone into the cave. After walking for a short distance, they saw a faint light shining from the depths of the cave. As they went deeper, the light became brighter and brighter until it was almost as bright as day. At this time, Guhan and the others had also arrived at the real entrance of the trial ground. It was a hall the size of a basketball court. There was a huge LED screen on one of the walls of the hall. The screen was lit up, but there were no pictures on it. There was only a sentence displayed on the screen. This is the trial ground for the younger generation. Sword bearers above treasure sword level will have their swords broken. Below this sentence was a small line of words. Yi Qing's friendly reminder. Is this really the trial ground left by Zhegendi? The Bumi sword spirit asked when she saw the line of words on the screen. What if this is a trap set by Yuan Ku and the others? These young people are the future hope of our 2 base cities. If anything happens to them here, the future of humanity will be finished. As soon as Confusion sword spirit's voice trailed off, the display screen that said, "This is the training ground for juniors. Trespassers above the level of treasured swords will have their sword marks broken," was instantly replaced by another line of words. The second horizontal piece of the ceiling on the 6th floor of the Yuzhang Sword Tower's office was smashed. After a minute, the line of words changed back to what it was before. This is the training ground for the younger generation. Anyone who wields a sword above the level of a treasure sword will suffer a broken sword scar. It seemed like the words on the LED screen changed automatically every minute. What is the meaning of this? Seeing this sudden change, the Confusion sword spirit was taken aback. The eagle cat sword spirit coughed and explained awkwardly, "Ahem, the ceiling had been smashed by Mistress Cloud Sky. In the end, we found a small box hidden in the ceiling. Inside the box was a piece of paper with the words Changyang Mountain Trial Ground. The confusion sword spirit nodded and no longer doubted the safety of the trial ground. I understand now. It seems like this is the training ground left behind by Zhetian Zhendi. The reason was simple. The Yuzhang Sword Tower was built during the era of Zhetian Zhendi. Every brick and tile there was built by Zhetian Zhendi. The place was heavily guarded, especially the Sword Tower Master's office. It was impossible for anyone to enter without the permission of the Sword Tower Master, let alone hide such a brocade box in the ceiling. In that case, there was only one answer. The heaven-shrouding Sword Emperor had personally hidden this brocade box when he was building the Sword Pavilion. This was a secret that only Zhetian Zhendi knew. The reason why Zhetian Zhendi did this was because he guessed that people would doubt the authenticity of the trial ground. Therefore, he left this message on the LED screen to prove that this was indeed a trial ground created by Zhetian Zhendi and not a trap set up by Yuan Ku. His Majesty Zhetian is truly meticulous. The confusion sword spirit's face was filled with sincere admiration. As a loyal fan of Zhetian Zhendi, he became even more loyal. Sigh. Although we can prove that this is indeed a trial ground left behind by His Majesty Zhetian, I don't understand why he would hide it from us. If it weren't for the two from the Liu Nian family and the Confucian family, we wouldn't have known that there was a trial ground hidden here even after 1,000 years, the Eagle Cat complained. Brother Eagle Cat, you're wrong. In my opinion, you're the one who messed up the sequence, the Confusion Sword Spirit said. Sequence? What sequence? You all think that the note hidden in the Sword Tower is to prove that the ruins were indeed set up by His Majesty Zhendi. Why don't you think about it the other way? That note is the correct way to open the trial ground. The correct way to open the trial ground is that His Majesty Zhetian wants you to find the note hidden in the ceiling and find the trial ground. He doesn't want you to find the trial ground for some inexplicable reason and then find the note. Confusion Sword Spirit, when did you become so talkative? The Eagle Cat complained. Forget it. No matter what, this trial ground is safe. Let's arrange for these little fellows to enter the trial ground. By the way, Tianyuan, where is the entrance to the trial ground? It's here. Shu Tianyuan walked to a spot in the northwest of the hall. The color of the floor was obviously different from the rest. The Confusion Sword Spirit and the Eagle Cat walked over to take a look and gasped. Why did the lines and equipment on the floor look exactly like the quantum teleportation circle? This is a quantum teleportation circle. The Eagle Cat muttered in disbelief. It was not clear if he was asking the Confusion Sword Spirit or the Confusion Sword Spirit. If I'm not blind, then this is definitely a quantum teleportation circle. The Confusion Sword Spirit was also puzzled. This quantum teleportation circle was obviously a piece of black technology that humans had only developed in the last 100 years. How could Zhetian Zhendi set up a quantum teleportation circle here 700 years ago? At that time, humans had only just recovered the technological level before the Great Apocalypse. Perhaps he obtained the quantum teleportation circle from Yuan Ku, who specialized in science and technology. Some of the more technologically advanced Yuan Ku and Zhetian Zhendi might have obtained the quantum teleportation circle from them. This was the most reasonable explanation the Eagle Cat could come up with. Forget it. We'll let those scientists worry about this. Now, let these little fellows step into the quantum teleportation circle and enter the trial ground, the Confusion Sword Spirit said decisively. This is the trial ground. When Guhan woke up from the dizziness brought about by the quantum teleportation circle, he found himself in a space surrounded by opaque walls of light. He was firmly surrounded by these walls of light on all sides. Only the top of his head was not covered by the walls of light. He could see the rock ceiling that was more than 20 meters high. Guhan should be in the inner space of Changyang Mountain. The whole mountain had been hollowed out by Zhetian Zhendi. This enclosed space was not big, but it was not small either. Guhan estimated that this space should be a standard square space of 10 meters by 10 meters, which was about the size of an ordinary apartment. Song Ifei and the others who had passed through the teleportation circle with Guhan were not next to Guhan. It seemed that the final landing point was different every time they were teleported. Ji Yuhan guessed that every sword-bearer who entered the trial ground would most likely be placed in a room that was covered by a wall of light. What's there to train in such a small space? Could it be that the first step is to test how we can break through this wall of light that's surrounding us? Guhan walked to the side of the wall of light and touched it with his hand. He found that the wall of light felt like flesh to the touch, or rather, it felt like the bouncy and beautiful body of a young girl. Guhan tried to use force to see if he could break through the limits of the wall of light. In the end, he found that no matter how much force he used, it would be absorbed by the wall of light. It was impossible to break through the blockade of this wall of light with the strength of a sword-bearer at the treasure sword level. Participants, please take your position at the starting point. A dignified male voice rang out in the space. Guhan had seen some rare video material left by Zhetian Jendi. In those videos, Zhetian Jendi Yi Qing spoke exactly like this male voice. Guhan noticed that in the middle of the room, there were two words written in white paint, starting point. It seemed that the male version of Zhetian Jendi wanted Guhan to stand on the word starting point. Guhan obeyed and stood on it obediently. Then, a hole appeared in the ground in front of Guhan, and a die the size of a watermelon rose out of the hole. Throw the die and decide your fate, Zhetian Jendi said. Guhan was still very obedient. He picked up the die and threw it into the air. The die spun for a while, and finally, the side with the word 5 on it landed on the top. You can take 5 steps forward, Zhetian Jendi said concisely. Just like that, the wall of light in front of Guhan disappeared. Inside the wall of light, there was also a 10-meter by 10-meter space surrounded by the wall of light. Guhan stepped into the next room, and the wall of light that had been opened before immediately closed up again. However, the wall of light in the second room opened up again. Guhan kept going through the opening of the wall of light to enter the next room. When he entered the fifth room, the wall of light stopped opening, and Guhan was trapped in the fifth room. Isn't this Monopoly? Guhan seemed to have understood the rules of this trial. Chapter 373. Monopoly was said to be a very popular game before the apocalypse. It was invented by Wang Shitsong, the son of the richest man in China at that time. It was said that Wang Shitsong was very dissolute. He bought a super cruise ship called Banana Cruise and put it on the boundless sea in Qianhai to have fun. Naturally, Wang Shitsong didn't stay on the ship alone. There were countless female streamers and other beauties on his ship. Wang Shitsong was worried. He was only one person, but there were hundreds of female streamers. If he had to go through all of them, he would be squeezed dry. Therefore, Wang Xikong invented the game Monopoly creatively. The room number of each female streamer became their serial number. Then, Wang Shitsong started to roll the dice. The number he rolled would be the number of the female streamer's room. The room number that stopped at the end would be the room that Wang Shitsong wanted to have fun in. Later on, Wang Shitsong even innovated and made a whole bunch of action cards, role-playing cards, playstyle cards, item cards, and so on. Then, he would draw a card every time he entered a room. He was so engrossed in it that he forgot everything. When he came back from the sea, he had turned from Lin Zitsong to Lin Feng. Guhan stood in the fifth room. Then, a small bar rose up in the middle of the room. Ji Yuhan walked to the front of the bar counter and saw such a paragraph of explanation written on the plastic board fixed on the bar counter. 3-star combat room. Defeat the opponent guarding the room to enter the next room. It's time to fight. Guhan's heart skipped a beat. He pulled out Heavenly Sword from his back and released Heavenly Sword from its sword form. According to the requirements of the Confusion Sword Spirit, before entering the trial ground, all the sword ladies had to return to their sword form. Are we going to fight? Heavenly Sword yawned. Her eyes were a little swollen. It seemed that she had drunk a lot yesterday. However, when the word fight was mentioned, Heavenly Sword instantly became energetic. She had been bored to death for the past few days. Fighting was a good way to relax her muscles. The moment Heavenly Sword was released, the small bar returned to the ground. A wall of light suddenly disappeared. A person wearing strange armor slowly walked out of the wall of light and into the room. This person's armor was very gorgeous. It was blue and white, full of the beauty of ancient Greece. However, the design of this armor seemed to have a huge flaw. Although his shoulders, wrists, heart, and navel were protected by armor, other parts of his body were only covered by a thin layer of tight-fitting clothing. Logically speaking, with Guhan's swordsmanship, he had 100 ways to chop those parts that were not protected by armor into minced meat without touching them. However, this was also a common problem with most of the armored Yuan Ku warriors. They only pursued the beauty of the armor and did not consider the actual practicality of the armor or whether it could defend against the enemy's attacks. Not only did it not provide any protection, it would also affect the warrior's mobility and consume the warrior's stamina. Rather than wearing such armor, it was better not to wear it. This way, he could move more quickly, and it would be easier for him to dodge in battle, just like King Yugo Gen's 100 Yu sword slaves. That's right, it seems like King Yu's armor is the same as this person's armor. As long as it's sexy, I don't care about anything else. I've seen this armor before. Yi Tian stared at the person for a long time, then slapped his head. I remember, when I was working for Yi Qing, I once killed a Yuan Ku like this. Strange, he was clearly killed by me and absorbed by the dimensional whirlpool, so why is his body still here? What do you mean by working for a tiger? Zetian Jendi is a tiger, so you're just sad. Guhan complained in his heart. However, Yi Tian's words revealed a very important piece of information, which was that this Yuan Ku was the Yuan Ku that Zetian Jendi had defeated. Strange, let me think, what is this Yuan Ku's name again? Yi Tian tried hard to recall this Yuan Ku's name, but before she could, Guhan answered, he is a bronze saint under the goddess of wisdom Athena of the Western Temple, a bronze saint of Pegasus. That's right, that's the name, bronze saint of Pegasus. After receiving Guhan's hint, Yi Tian's memory instantly popped up in her mind. This Yuan Ku was the famous Saint Seiya. But I saw on the news a while ago that Saint Seiya of Pegasus protected Athena and repelled Sword Immortal Autumn Rain's ambush, which means that Saint Seiya of Pegasus is still alive. Why is he here? Guhan looked at the Saint Seiya of Pegasus and couldn't help but mutter to himself. Seiya. Upon hearing this name, the Pegasus Saint Seiya, who had been silent all this while, suddenly raised his head and revealed a handsome face. You know Senior Seiya is still alive. That's right, at least 3 months ago, Saint Seiya of Pegasus was still alive. 3 months later, I don't know. We don't have this information. Guhan nodded. Alive, it's good that he's alive. The Saint Seiya of Pegasus smiled and touched the right side of his chest with his left hand. I am Bronze Saint of Pegasus, Light Tooth. Thank you for informing me of Senior Seiya's information. Strange. I remember that Bronze Saints should be at the Ghost grade or Soul grade. Yuan Ku has been infected by the filth of the dimensional rift and lost his rationality, becoming a Yuan Ku who only knows how to kill. How can this Bronze Saint, Light Tooth, still retain his rationality? As though he saw the doubt in Guhan's heart, the Bronze Saint smiled bitterly. I did lose my rationality, but after I died, my soul and small universe were freed, and I regained my intelligence. Yi Tian raised his brows and asked with interest, You're already dead? Of course, I'm already dead. Back then, you shattered my saint clothes and cut off my head. Don't tell me you've already forgotten about it. Light Tooth smiled at Yi Tian. TSK, to be able to maintain such a sincere smile towards the enemy who killed him. Saints, especially bronze saints, are indeed the embodiment of kindness and beauty. Yi Tian asked, in other words, you're actually a ghost now. Light Tooth sighed and said, No, my soul has already returned to the world where I should be. Right now, I'm just a trace of His Majesty shrouding Heaven's memory. You said that you're shrouding Heaven's Jendi's memory? Guhan was silent for a moment. I heard that the Emperor's sword, Yuan-tu Avici, can sever all things that can be severed. Could it be that the Yuan-tu Avici can also sever memories? I don't know. Light Tooth shook his head. I only know that I'm a trace of His Majesty shrouding Heaven's memory. My mission is to wait for the challenger to defeat me. Come, use your strength to defeat me, or chase me out of this room. Then, you can open the next door and continue forward. All right, I'll fulfill your request. Guhan nodded, then patted Yi Tian's shoulder. This is your old opponent. Defeat him again. Don't be inferior to the previous you. H. This heroine is 10 times stronger than before. Yi Tian snorted in disdain. She suggested using Yi Tian to attack Light Tooth's vitals. Unexpectedly, Light Tooth jumped and took a big step back, directly retreating from the door he just entered from. Victory! As Light Tooth retreated from the room, the male version of Shrouding Heaven Gendi's voice rang out, indicating that Guhan had already won this battle. Because according to the rules that Light Tooth had mentioned before, defeating him or chasing him out of the room would be considered a victory. In other words, Yi Tian had only used one sword, and Light Tooth had already lost. What do you mean? Are you insulting this heroine? Yi Tian's expression was very ugly. Last time, you could clearly last more than 10 moves. Do you think this heroine isn't worthy to be your opponent? No, no, no. It's the opposite. It's I, Light Tooth, who isn't worthy to be your opponent. Light Tooth shook his head. I've already been tortured to death by you once. I have no interest in being tortured to death by you again. If I had known that this sword mistress was you, I wouldn't have come out. Goodbye, heroine. I wish you and your sword mistress all the best. I hope you and your sword mistress can find the treasure that His Majesty Shrouding Heaven left behind. After speaking, Light Tooth disappeared from the door. The disappeared light wall reappeared, surrounding the room once more. The bar also rose up once more. That's strange. I remember that Saint Seiyas, especially Athena's bronze Saint Seiyas, would all fight to the death without retreating. Even if they died, they seemed to be able to jump out of the netherworld to fight again. Their willpower was terrifying. Why would this Light Fang admit defeat so easily? Because there was no one else around, Guhan didn't think silently. Instead, he directly spoke his thoughts. Now that you mention it, it's a little strange. This heroine also remembers that even after I chopped off his head, he still used his small universe and his body's instincts to exchange 3 moves with me. Even Yi Qing was amazed by his determination to fight, which was even stronger than a god's. However, this kind of personality of running away when he can't win is very similar to that guy Shrouding Heaven. Your descendants are really shameless, always praising that guy Shrouding Heaven, saying that he's one of the strongest Gendi. You don't know how much of a bastard she was when she was young. She only picked Yuan Ku, who had the same strength as her, to fight. Once there was any movement, she would be the first to escape. There were a few times when she even left this heroine behind to cover her retreat. It was really infuriating. Yi Tian recalled some bad memories and complained indignantly. Now that you mention it, I actually understand. Guhan smiled slightly. It seems that this Light Tooth really is a trace of Yi Qing's memory. Although his appearance and strength are the same as the real Light Tooth, his personality has inherited Yi Qing's own. I really want to know what Yi Qing left for me here, and what is her relationship with me. Guhan rubbed the jasper ring in his hand and muttered to himself. Chapter 374. At this time, in the hall of the quantum teleportation array at the entrance of the Changyang Mountain Trial Formation, after sending all the sword bearers to the quantum teleportation array, these 2 former comrades each took out a massage chair from their dimensional pockets, then lay comfortably on the chair and began to chat. Mystery, where's your Zhonlu? Why haven't I seen her? The eagle cat sword spirit had wanted to ask this question for a long time. Unlike his eagle cat sword spirit, all the sword ladies were artificial and didn't have any spiritual intelligence. They could just be placed in the scabbard, and he didn't have to worry about the sword ladies feeling unhappy or anything. Among the sword ladies of the mystery sword spirit, there was a natural sword lady, which was the spirit sword lady of the mystery sword spirit, Zhonlu. Zhonlu was one of the few spirit sword ladies forged by humans, because almost all the sword ladies forged by humans were famous swords, treasured swords, or ancient swords. For example, Dragon Spring Sword was forged in the same furnace as Zhonlu, so it was a famous sword lady, not a spirit sword lady. Oh right, Fish Guts was also forged in the same furnace as Zhonlu. She was even worse off, as she was only a treasured sword lady. Only a few sword ladies forged by ancient people had crossed the threshold of spirit sword lady, such as Gan Jiang and Mo Xie. These sword ladies that had crossed the threshold of Spirit Sword Lady were all extremely spiritual, and if they stayed in the scabbard for a long time, they would rebel. Therefore, Jean-Lu would generally follow behind the mystery sword spirit, and rarely disappeared. I sent her to greet the sword-bearers of Jerusalem base city. The mystery sword spirit curled his lips. Their place is all sand, where would there be such a dense forest? However, they have already entered the range of Chongyang Mountain, but they can't find the entrance to the trial ground. I can't be separated from the kids in our city, so I can only send Jean-Lu to pick them up. TSK, these donkey heads are really fast. The eagle cat mocked. It was obvious that the eagle cat didn't like the Jerusalem base city. It could even be said that it disliked it. Jerusalem base city was the only base city in the Middle East, and it was also the only base city ruled by religion. The sword-bearers there were basically madmen from the Green sect, and it did not have a good reputation among the other 7 base cities. People often heard stupid things like stoning women to death. If it were not for the overall situation of the human race, Yang Jing would not have told the people of Jerusalem about the trial ground. Tell Jean-Lu to go around the forest a few more times. It's best if she goes around until night time. That way, we can buy more time for our children. The eagle cat's sword spirit eye glowed as it came up with this idea. Confusion sword spirit smiled. Have you forgotten? Jean-Lu is born with no sense of direction. The eagle cat sword spirit's face stiffened. It spat on the ground before bursting into laughter. You scammer. Why are you even more cunning than I am? Let's not talk about those disgusting donkey heads. Oh eagle cat, oh eagle cat. How come I've never seen it before? How can you be so shrewd? Confusion sword spirit said with an expression as if he had just been away for 3 days. I'm shrewd. The eagle cat sword spirit was taken aback. Confusion sword spirit, others may not know, but you know me. Back in the days, I had the worst face, the worst temper, the most direct words, and the easiest to offend. When have I ever been shrewd? Well, let me ask you, why are you still acting like nothing happened when such a big thing happened in Yuzhong City? You don't look anxious at all. Confused, the sword spirit of confusion asked. Are you talking about Fort Yuyang? The eagle cat sword spirit looked a little gloomy. If it were a few decades ago, I would be happy. But now, I'm not worried about life and death anymore. It's not the first time Fort Yuyang has been attacked, and most of the sword bearers have returned. I don't have anything to worry about. Oh, then you don't have to worry about the invasion that Yuzhong City is about to face. Confusion sword spirit asked. What? What did you say? The eagle cat sword spirit immediately lost his composure. No one had ever told him that Yuzhong City was also facing an invasion. Looks like you've been kept in the dark. Confusion sword spirit shook his head. Looks like Yuzhong City is taking this trial more seriously than I thought. In order to let you lead the team with peace of mind, they even hid such an important matter from you. Me too, I shouldn't have mentioned this to you at all. No, Confusion sword spirit, thank you for telling me this. If you didn't tell me, I'm afraid I would have been kept in the dark forever. The eagle cat sword spirit's expression became a little fierce. What's the situation in Yuzhong City right now? You must tell me everything you know. If Sword Immortal Cloud Sky and Sword Immortal Baiju are keeping this from you, then they must have their reasons. If I tell them, then wouldn't I be ruining the internal affairs of Yuzhong City? The sword spirit Confusion Mist said with a troubled expression. If you don't tell me, you'll be ruining our friendship. Make your choice. The eagle cat sword spirit said very firmly. Sigh, I'm afraid of you. But let's make a deal. You can only return to Yuzhong City after the trial is over. You're not allowed to go back by yourself. I'm not responsible for looking after your child, Confusion Sword Spirit said. Don't worry, I'm not that kind of person. The eagle cat sword spirit nodded in agreement. Actually, I don't know much. I only know that this time, the Western Demon Beasts and the Western Temple of God have joined forces to attack Yuzhong City. They've already occupied Fort Yuyang as their base and are preparing to launch a major attack on Yuzhong City. I can confirm that at least 4 U-level Yuan Ku have already arrived at Fort Yuyang. Right now, Yuzhong City has entered the highest state of alert. They've also sent out a request for help to the other 8 base cities. I don't know about the other cities, but our Yangjing City's swordbearers have already set out to support Yuzhong City under the leadership of the 10 Directions Immortal Sword. However, the road from Yangjing City to Yuzhong City has already been closed. We can only reach Yuzhong City through the Fujian province. This is the news I received yesterday. The signal in Gansu province is too bad. Since then, I haven't been in contact with Yangjing City. I don't know the latest situation. Confusion Sword Spirit said everything he knew. Thank you. The Eagle Cat Sword Spirit clasped his fists at Confusion Sword Spirit gratefully. Confusion Sword Spirit, there's something I've never told you before. Now, I'm going to tell you. Oh, what is it? Don't tell me you've confessed to mere extermination. Confusion Sword Spirit joked. Mere Extermination was a swordbearer who teamed up with Confusion Sword Spirit and the Eagle Cat. Now, he was a spirit sword level swordbearer. Back then, the Eagle Cat Sword Spirit had a crush on Mere Extermination. However, due to various reasons, he never confessed. Later, the Eagle Cat Sword Spirit's parents arranged a blind date and found someone to marry. Since then, the matter had died down. Who would have thought that the Eagle Cat Sword Spirit would bring it up now? No, I haven't been in contact with Mere Extermination for 3 months. The Eagle Cat Sword Spirit blushed. Alright, you and I haven't been in contact for 3 years. And you said you still have a crush on Mere Extermination. Look, Mere Extermination is still alone. You still have a chance, as long as... Enough. The Eagle Cat Sword Spirit forcefully interrupted the Confusion Sword Spirit. Confusion Sword Spirit, what I want to tell you is that I, the Eagle Cat, am that kind of person. What? What do you mean? The Confusion Sword Spirit was dumbfounded. When he reacted, the Eagle Cat Sword Spirit's figure disappeared from the hall. Confusion Sword Spirit, I'll leave the children of Yuzhong City to you. Bring them back to Yangjing City. If anything happens to Yuzhong City, they will be the last seeds of Yuzhong City. The Eagle Cat Sword Spirit's words echoed in the air. This guy still has the same temper. He hasn't changed in his life. The Confusion Sword Spirit smiled bitterly. He had no intention of chasing the Eagle Cat Sword Spirit back, even if he could easily catch up with the Eagle Cat and suppress it to the point where it couldn't move. Damn it, throwing these children on my head again. What I'm afraid of has happened. Confusion Sword Spirit muttered. He had tacitly accepted the Eagle Cat Sword Spirit's entrustment. Strange, the people from Jerusalem are already at the door. Could it be that Zhonlu's poor sense of direction has been cured? After a few minutes, the Confusion Sword Spirit was shocked again. After defeating the Bronze Saint Seiya, a die appeared on the newly raised bar. This meant that Guhan could move forward again. Guhan threw the die casually. Luck was not bad on his second roll. He actually rolled a 6. Without any nonsense, Guhan directly passed through the 6 rooms. A new bar rose up, and the information of the room was written on it. Event room. Please draw an event card to trigger a new event. This was indeed the trick of a tycoon. The side of the small bar suddenly opened. Countless cards made of unknown materials flew out from the opened small opening. After dancing in the air for a while, they neatly arranged themselves into a square formation. It was just like the broadcast gymnastics in the school field. Guhan carefully observed these cards. He noticed that there were some complicated decorative patterns on the back of the cards. The words event were written in the center, as if to prove that these cards were indeed event cards. However, there was nothing on the front of the card. It was just a piece of white paper without any words. Please draw a card. The male version of Gendi's voice sounded again. Perhaps the specific words would only be revealed after the card was drawn. Guhan counted the number of cards and found that there were 12 horizontally and 10 vertically. There was a total of 120 cards. There was nothing much to choose from. Guhan randomly picked one card from the square formation. After Guhan made his choice, the rest of the cards flew back to the interior of the bar. Then, as expected, a line of words appeared on the originally blank card. You have encountered a dimensional shift. You will randomly appear in any space within the trial array. Before Guhan could react after reading this, a strong light shone directly into Guhan's eyes, causing Guhan to instantly lose his vision. After the strong light dissipated, he heard an extremely cautious and nervous voice. Who are you, demon? State your name. Wait, why does this voice sound so familiar? Chapter 375. Hey, Guhan, why are you here? Am I starving to the point that I'm in a trance? Liuyan Ling rubbed her eyes in disbelief. She had never imagined that Guhan would suddenly appear in front of her. Ling. Guhan's eyes finally regained their normal vision. Then, he saw Liuyan Ling standing in front of him. This made Guhan heave a sigh of relief in his heart. Finding Liuyan Ling meant that one of the objectives of this trip had been achieved. However, this objective had been achieved a little too easily. He had only entered the trial grounds for about 10 minutes and he had already successfully found Liuyan Ling. Guhan had thought that he would have to search for at least 10 minutes before he could see Liuyan Ling. Hey, cut the crap. I'm asking you, do you have any food on you? Liuyan Ling's face was full of surprise. She was so surprised that stars could be seen in her eyes. She stared at Guhan passionately as she asked. Of course I do. Guhan nodded. In order to feed this adorable Qing Pin, he had restocked once before he set off and again at Fort Yeyang. Naturally, he had no lack of food on him. Guhan took out some steaming hot rice, green vegetables, bright red braised pork, unopened ham sausages, a bag of beef jerky, and the last kilogram of crispy crisps from his dimensional pocket. That's right. Guhan had also very considerately brought out bowls and chopsticks for Liuyan Ling to use. That's all. You can eat. Halfway through Guhan's sentence, Liuyan Ling began to eat unceremoniously. She directly picked up the basin of braised pork, picked up the chopsticks, and put them in her mouth like dumplings. She took a random bite and stuffed it straight into her stomach. Seeing that almost a quarter of the braised pork in the basin was gone, Liuyan Ling reluctantly put down the braised pork. She slowly scooped up a bowl of rice and picked up some vegetables. At this moment, Liuyan Ling finally displayed the elegance of a young lady from an aristocratic family. When Liuyan Ling put down her bowl and chopsticks, indicating that she really couldn't eat anymore, Guhan took back all the food. Isn't it a little embarrassing? Seeing Guhan clean up the dishes like a housewife, Liuyan Ling's face started to flush. I'm not like this usually, I'm just too hungry. Liuyan Ling tried her best to explain, and I don't eat much. But not only have I not eaten for the past few days, I've also been fighting every day, so my appetite has suddenly increased. I usually only eat half, about a third. A quarter of a basin of braised pork, 5 whole bowls of rice, a kilogram of vegetables, and dozens of sausages. Even if this was multiplied by a third, it would still be a frightening appetite. It's fine, I'm used to it. You don't even eat a third of what Qing Pin eats, you don't have to worry about it. Guhan said seriously. He really wasn't complaining. Hey, Guhan, is this the young lady from the Liuyan aristocratic family that you're trying to save? Yi Tian, who had been drinking and laughing at the two of them, immediately perked up when she saw that Liuyan Ling had finally finished eating. She took the initiative to ask, Hey, little girl, let me ask you, who is this person from the Liuyan aristocratic family? His Ling's 7th generation ancestor. Liuyan Ling answered without even thinking. It seemed that Liuyan Ling had memorized the names of the Liuyan aristocratic family's ancestors. Your Lady Yi Tian. Liuyan Ling had been so focused on eating that she didn't even look at Yi Tian. Now that Yi Tian had taken the initiative to ask, Liuyan Ling began to observe Yi Tian. She quickly recognized that this sword lady was Yi Tian. How did you recognize me? Yi Tian asked curiously. The gourd on Lady Yi Tian's head is unique and unparalleled. Naturally, Ling recognized it with a single glance. Liuyan Ling smiled and bowed to Yi Tian. The 29th generation descendant of the Liuyan aristocratic family greets Lady Yi Tian. This was the greeting that every sword wielder would use when meeting a new sword lady. However, this was only limited to natural-born sword ladies. Man-made sword ladies could not receive this treatment. After all, man-made sword ladies had worrisome intelligence. Whether they had a soul or not was a matter of debate. Not bad, Ji Han. You've actually managed to synchronize with Lady Heavenly. When Lady Heavenly and I touched the hilt of Lady Heavenly's sword, Lady Heavenly didn't react at all. She didn't like me at all. How pitiful. Fleeting Cold, who had eaten her fill, returned to her noisy personality. She began to discuss Yi Tian with Gu Han. To be honest, Liuyan Ling was a little jealous of Gu Han. This guy had actually succeeded with Lady Yi Tian. It seemed that not only had she suffered in coming to Chongyang Mountain, she had also missed out on many interesting things. This is fate. Gu Han's reply was concise and comprehensive. Liuyan Ling could not refute him. As a result, Liuyan Ling began to ask questions to Yi Tian. She pulled on Yi Tian's arm intimately and asked unhappily, "Lady Yi Tian, why didn't you choose me? Why did you choose this guy? This is fate." Yi Tian sighed, "If I could choose, I would definitely choose you. How great is it? I've long wanted to become the sword lady of your Liuyan aristocratic family. Unfortunately, fate makes fools of people. I always meet stupid swordsmen like you." Cough cough. "Ling, what happened just now? Why are you so hungry? Didn't you just disappear for 2 weeks?" Gu Han felt that he had to interrupt this conversation. Otherwise, who knew how Yi Tian would ridicule him? For some reason, when Gu Han saw Liuyan Ling, he actually felt a little excited. He did not want to embarrass himself in front of Liuyan Ling. However, the question he had just asked was also a question in Gu Han's mind. He could not understand why Liuyan Ling was so hungry. Due to the existence of the dimensional pocket, every sword wielder would store enough food to last them for about a year in their dimensional pocket. Some cautious sword-bearers would even store 3 or even 10 years' worth of food. Gu Han really could not understand. Liuyan Ling had only disappeared for 2 weeks. Why did it seem like she had not eaten for 5 or 6 days? Don't mention it. I'm so unlucky. Liuyan Ling was infuriated by Gu Han's question. You don't know. That sky covering Jendi is crazy. What kind of stupid test is he giving me? He wants me to compete with a husky in terms of eating, and if I lose, I have to hand over all my food except for the nutrient solution. So you lost? Asked Gu Han. Yes, I lost. Liuyan Ling nodded. How can a human eat more than a husky? But don't you have the nutrient solution? Only a husky would eat that kind of disgusting stuff. Hey, Gu Han, thank you. After a moment of silence, Liuyan Ling raised her head and looked into Gu Han's eyes, and spoke with sincerity. Gu Han could see tears in Liuyan Ling's eyes. The young lady of the Fleeting Time family is actually crying. You don't have to thank me. I'm not the only one who came to save you. Many people from Yangjing City, Yuzhang City, and the other 6 base cities have all sent people to save you, Ji Han said calmly. They're here for this training ground. Liuyan Ling said with disdain, they can't wait for me to die here. That would be the end of the Fleeting Time family line. What a wonderful thing. Then have you ever thought that I'm here for the trial as well? Gu Han retorted. In truth, Gu Han knew that he was not here because of Liuyan Ling. He was here because of the promise he made to Yi Qing in the dungeon. Who cares about that? I know you're here, and you're the first person to find me. Liuyan Ling shook her head and leaned on Gu Han's shoulder. You don't know this, but I've always thought that I'm a strong person. It's only after I brought these people here that I realized how fragile I am. I can be afraid, lonely, fearful, and hungry. You might not believe it, but I've always thought that I'm the chosen one before I came here. I'm the heir of the Fleeting Time family, and these emotions will never appear on me. Look, Gu Han, I'm really happy to see you appear in front of me. The moment I saw you, my heart almost jumped out of my chest. Fate in this world is really wonderful. I went to Yuzhang City just for Yixian, but I didn't expect to meet you and Qingpin. I didn't expect to pretend to be a couple with you. The most unexpected thing is that the first person I saw in this endless wait and hunger is you. Gu Han, don't you think this is fate? It's fate. Is this the true feelings of a young girl? When Gu Han heard Liuyan Ling's words, even if his heart was ruthless, his whole body was stirred up. No matter how stupid Gu Han was, He could still hear the heart of a young girl from Liuyan Ling's words. Liuyan Ling has fallen in love with me, Guhan is almost certain. So, does Guhan like Liuyan Ling? Guhan can't answer this question himself. Before he met Qing Pin, Guhan could tell himself very clearly that he won't fall in love with anyone before he avenged his parents. But now, Guhan doesn't know the answer. Guhan's heart is no longer the cold, dark Guhan who can kill the fleeting time calendar. Guhan's heart has been half occupied by the winter sun. Guhan knows how to care for others, think for others, take care of others' difficulties. Yes, he also knows how to complain. In short, Guhan can no longer tell himself very clearly that he wants to be a heartless person. Do I like Liuyan Ling? Guhan asked himself this question again. Maybe he likes her a little, but more than that, he is at a loss. I don't know if this is fate, if this is fate. Finally, Guhan said firmly, but I will definitely take you out, take you away from here. When he said this, Artoria's appearance appeared in Guhan's mind for no reason. She was wearing a white wedding dress. Chapter 376. How is it? How much do you know about Fort Yuyang? Inside the conference room, Zhu Wudao was discussing the situation with his subordinates. The day before yesterday, which was the third day after Fort Yuyang was conquered, the fort was completely shrouded in a black fog. Fort Yuyang was completely shrouded in a black fog. Not only could this black fog block vision, but it could also block all detection devices. The 100 drones from Yuzhang City never came out after flying in. Obviously, they had all been destroyed by the Yuanshan inside. Zhu Wudao had no choice but to take the risk. He sent a team of sword-bearers, all of whom were treasure-grade sword maidens, into the black fog. They used their naked eyes to scout the situation at Fort Yuyang. The void-piercing sword maidens were treasure-grade sword maidens, and their fighting abilities were extremely weak. They were among the bottom few sword maidens of the same rank. However, the void-piercing sword maidens had a special ability. They could travel through space within a kilometer. If they risked their lives, they could even travel through space continuously. It was the best way to scout and escape. Sure enough, the small team successfully rushed out of the black fog and brought the latest news from Yuyang Fortress. However, this news made Zhu Wudao feel a little hopeless. Sir, according to the team's information, not only did they find the Western Beast and Western Temple's Yuan Ku, but even the Martyr's Palace's Yuan Ku has appeared. According to their calculations before they fled, they sensed the aura of 5 Universe Yuan Ku and 26 Nether and Meteor Yuan Ku. However, the detection range of the delusion splitter doesn't cover the entire Fort Yuyang. At least a third of the area hasn't been detected, so the number of Yuan Ku might be even higher, an official from the intelligence department answered carefully. At the same time, his heart was filled with pessimism. The delusion splitter was the only unique existence among the void-piercing sword maidens. Its ability was to break through magical barriers within a certain range and see the real situation around it. The void-piercing sword maidens had to bring along the delusion splitter when they moved. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to get any real information. There were already so many Yuan Kus that had been detected. Including those that hadn't been detected, Yuan Ku's strength was already more than 3 times that of the entire Yuzhang City. This was a power that could definitely break through Yuzhang City's system. It's okay. How's our scouting team? Are they all right? Zhu Wudao coughed. The situation is not looking good. The leader of this team sacrificed 60 years of his life in order to escape with the delusion vanquishing sword. He sacrificed himself on the way back to Yuzhang City. The rest of the team members also consumed an average of about 30 years of their lifespan. At this point, tears welled up in the corner of the official's eyes. They were clearly young men in their 20s or 30s, but now all of their hair is white and their sideburns are white. They look like old men in their 60s. Their lifespans have been greatly overdrawn. They are all heroes, heroes of Yuzhang City. Zhu Wudao's hands trembled slightly. This was intolerable for an immortal sword wielder. This meant that Zhu Wudao was already old, so old that he couldn't even control his own body. Let them have a good rest, then go to the warehouse to get the eternal water for them to drink. This is the last thing we can do, Zhu Wudao said weakly. The eternal water was a type of spiritual water that could increase one's lifespan. It was a very rare treasure. There were very few reserves in Yuzhang City. Usually, it was used by sword immortals and sword spirits to increase their lifespans. Now that Zhu Wudao had given such a treasure to a group of treasure sword wielder, it could be considered as making up for some of the guilt in his heart. What about the other base cities? Have their reinforcements arrived? Zhu Wudao recovered his emotions and returned to a calm state. He began to inquire about the situation in the other base cities. The current situation in Yuzhang City was very obvious. It was impossible to resist this attack with Yuzhang City's own strength. They could only hope that they could get enough support from the other base cities. The first rescue team from Yangjing City has set off. It is estimated that they will arrive in Yuzhang City in 3 days. In addition, the Lionian family has sent people to negotiate with the dragon race of the East Sea, hoping to use the power of the dragon race to transport reinforcements from London and Los Angeles. However, they will only arrive in 10 days at the earliest. What about the other 4 cities? Have they replied to us? Zhu Wudao was a little angry. Why had only 3 base cities expressed their stance? What about the other 4? Were they going to leave them to die? Jerusalem City said that they are in the middle of Ramadan and must wait until Ramadan is over before they can support us. Leningrad City said that they have also detected a large number of Yuan Ku gathering around them. Maybe they will ask for reinforcements then. Berlin City and Buenos Aires City did not have any reply. Their immortal sword wielder doesn't seem to be in the cities, so they can't give them clear orders. F***CK, these bastards. Have they forgotten how Yuzhang City did its best to help them when they were in trouble? These bastards. Zhu Wudao could no longer control his emotions. Only 3 of the other 7 base cities have agreed to send reinforcements. 2 of the base cities' reinforcements will only arrive in 10 days. What does this mean? Will Yuan Ku wait 10 days before attacking the city? President, please calm down. You are the one who needs to stay calm the most in the city. The official tried to persuade him. Zhu Wudao waved his hand weakly. Go and do your investigation. Report to me immediately about Yuan Ku's every move. Go. Yes, sir. The official retreated. Zhu Wudao's eyes looked past the window towards the boundless sky. Lu Ren, oh Lu Ren. Daddy hopes that you can stay in the trial grounds as long as possible. Daddy might not be able to see you again. You said that you have been trapped in this room for 4 days. Guhan looked at the rising bar counter in confusion. What mission is in this room? It can actually trap you for 4 days. It's this damned apple-picking mission. Speaking of this mission, Lionian Ling was furious. She pointed at the mission prompt on the bar counter and said, when the mission starts, a fruit tree will appear, and the mission requires me to pick 50 fruits in 3 seconds. How can I do that? I've tried my best, but I can only pick 15 fruits at most. Pick fruits. Guhan was stunned when he heard the contents of the mission. Then, he revealed a strange smile. Ling, can you please demonstrate for me? Are you trying to make fun of me, Lionian Ling? Lionian Ling's face was full of anger, but she did not refuse Guhan. Instead, she took a few steps forward, placed her hand on the bar counter, and shouted angrily, I'm ready. The fruit tree will appear in 5 seconds. Please get ready, sky-covering Jendi said in a cold male voice. Then, the entire illusion changed in an instant. The originally undecorated blank room turned into a green grassland. About 5 seconds later, in the center of the grassland, a tall fruit tree rose from the ground. This is an apple tree. Guhan recognized the origin of the tree at a glance. What? You're asking why Guhan knows that this is an apple tree? Isn't this nonsense? Can't you see that the tree is full of apples? The moment the apple tree rose from the ground, Lionian Ling also jumped up. Her figure was as fast as lightning, passing through the canopy quickly. 3 seconds later, the apple tree disappeared, leaving behind a girl with a bag full of apples in her arms. 1, 2, 3, 4, 17, 18, 19, 20. Liu Ling began to count the apples in her arms, but Liu Ling did not use the normal counting method. Instead, she used the apples as bullets, throwing them at Gu Han. Every time she threw them, she counted them. By the time all the apples were thrown, Gu Han had been hit a total of 20 times. PH. This is what you get for making fun of me. After hitting Gu Han, Liu Ling was obviously in a good mood. Her face was also full of a happy smile. She laughed very happily, a kind of happiness that could not be suppressed. She could not remember when was the last time she laughed so happily. As you wish. Ji Han shook his head. Fleeting time Ling was just throwing random apples at him. He did not aim or predict where the apples would land. Ji Han was able to dodge all of the apples with ease, and not a single one of them landed on him. However, Gu Han did not choose to dodge. Instead, he stood there and used his body to catch all the apples. Anyway, these apples were not painful for Gu Han's strong body. At most, it was like being bitten by a mosquito. It was also a good thing to let Liu Ling vent. She must have held back a lot of grievances these days. I didn't expect to pick 20 apples this time. It's a third better than my best record. After smashing the apples, Liu Ling found that her speed and movement were a lot better than before. This made Liu Ling very surprised. When Liu Ling's movement was practiced to this level, it was impossible to have a big improvement in a short time unless the physical fitness had been greatly improved. For example, this times 1/3. Under normal circumstances, Liu Ling estimated that she would need at least another 5 years of hard work to achieve it. Above 20, every time he increased the number of apples he could pluck, he would have to put in double the effort. Could it be that because he is by my side, my heart is happy, so I unconsciously improve? Liu Ling began to imagine in her heart. Unfortunately, this beautiful idea was mercilessly destroyed by Gu Han in less than a second. I guess you should be full and have strength. Gu Han, this idiot, said the truth blindly. TSK, if your stomach is full, then come. Let me see how many you can catch. Liu Ling was so angry with Gu Han's words that her nose turned red. She shouted for Gu Han to try. I'm not in a hurry. Gu Han waved his hand. He turned to Yi Tian, who had been watching the show, and said with a smile, Yi Tian, why don't you try? Chapter 377. 1, 2, 3, 4. 22, 23. Yi Tian counted all the apples in her hand. In 3 seconds, Yi Tian had plucked 23 apples, 2 more than Liu Ling. Lady Yi Tian, you're so amazing. Liu Ling clapped with all her might, trying her best to flatter Yi Tian. Chimph, of course. Amongst all the sword ladies, I, Yi Tian, am one of the best. Yi Tian said carkily. After saying that, he even winked at Ji Han. I don't deny that your swordsmanship is one of the best among all the sword ladies. Gu Han frowned, but why do you have to throw the apples at me when you're counting? Is there a need for that? Of course, I can throw the apples at other women, but I can't, Yi Tian said with her hands on her hips. Then, Gu Han fell silent. He suddenly realized that he couldn't refute Yi Tian's words at all. Even if he could, arguing with a sword lady like Yi Tian would only waste time and lower her favorability towards him. There was no use at all. All right, I've finished plucking. Now it's your turn. Although your swordsmanship isn't as good as mine, you're still half as good as mine. If you can pluck 13 or 14 apples, you'll pass, Yi Tian said carkily. Heaven Reliance said smugly. She seemed to have forgotten just how terrifying Ji Han's swordsmanship was in that 1 versus 200 battle. Meanwhile, Liu Ling looked at Gu Han with a snicker, waiting for Gu Han to pluck the apples. Perhaps I can use this test to see just how much of a gap there is between me and Gu Han, Liu Ling mumbled in her heart. She did not have a real understanding of Gu Han's swordsmanship. In her opinion, Gu Han had only learned ancient martial arts from an unorthodox source. It was impossible for it to be compared to the foundation that had been taught by the Liu Nian aristocratic family since he was young. Gu Han nodded and then activated the switch on the small bar counter. 5 seconds later, the apple tree appeared again. Gu Han jumped onto the tree, and the leaves danced wildly. When the apple tree disappeared, Guhan appeared in front of everyone with an armful of apples. 15 in total. Guhan naturally wouldn't be like Liuyan Ling and Yi Tian, using counting as an excuse to play a game of smashing people. Guhan wasn't that childish. He just glanced at the apple indifferently, reported the number, and directly threw the apple on the ground. Not bad, not bad. It's at the level when I was so hungry that I fainted. Liuyan Ling smiled and clapped her hands, thinking happily in her heart. This idiot's strength was indeed, as she had guessed, much weaker than her. It seemed that she could casually bully him in the future. As for Yi Tian, he gave Guhan a very disdainful look. Liar, if you have the ability, then show me your true strength. Oh, this sentence was said by Yi Tian through the sword mark, so it was impossible for Liuyan Ling to hear it. This is my true strength, I didn't hide anything. Guhan shook his head and replied Yi Tian through the sword mark, my meridians haven't been completely connected, so I can only display 60% of my strength. Being able to pluck 15 apples is already the result of my full strength. Your meridians are damaged. Why didn't I know? Yi Tian was startled, his tone seemed to be a little worried. When it was damaged, I hadn't synchronized with you yet, so of course you didn't know. Guhan smiled bitterly, moreover, you've never asked me about meridians. Wait, if 15 is 60% of your strength, doesn't that mean your true strength is 25? With a simple division, Yi Tian calculated the shocking number 25. This meant that the baseline of Guhan's strength was higher than Yi Tian's by 2. Although Yi Tian had sensed that Guhan's swordsmanship strength shouldn't be lower than his during the last battle in the Yaoguang Sword Sect Challenge, he didn't expect that Guhan's strength to be a little stronger than his. Although the quantitative comparison of plucking apples was too one-sided and didn't have much value, Yi Tian felt that he was a head shorter than Guhan, just like how he was a head shorter than Yi Qing back then. What are you guys secretly talking about through the sword mark? Liuyan Ling saw that Guhan and Yi Tian's expressions were stiff at the same time, and knew that Yi Tian and Guhan were whispering to each other. She started to feel a little sour in her heart. They were actually talking behind her back, it was such a hateful feeling. I just told Yi Tian that my meridians are damaged, so I can't unleash my full strength. Otherwise, I could at least pluck 15. Guhan answered honestly. This was the truth, there wasn't a single bit of falsehood in it. However, when Liuyan Ling heard this, she couldn't help but chuckle, and the little thoughts in her heart disappeared. It turned out that this Guhan felt that he had lost face in front of her, so he forced his meridians to be damaged. What 25? Even if he trained for another 30 years, he wouldn't be able to break through 25. Alright, even if you can pluck 25, it's useless. This task requires you to pluck 50. If you can't do it, you can only wait for 7 days to be directly sent out by the training array. Liuyan Ling said with waning interest. She had stayed in this training array for 2 more weeks, so naturally, she was very clear about the details and routines of the training array. There were 2 ways to leave this training array. One was to reach the end of the training array, and then she would be able to obtain the reward that Zhetian Zhendi had placed in the training array. The second way was to stay in a room for 7 days, and then the training array would automatically send you out. However, you would never be able to enter this training array again. This was already the 4th day that Liuyan Ling had been trapped in this room. In another 3 days, Liuyan Ling would be forcefully sent out, which made Liuyan Ling very unhappy. No. Things aren't that bad. Plucking 50 apples in 3 seconds is something that can only be done by a spirit sword level sword wielder. However, this training array restricts sword wielder above treasure sword level from entering. This means that there must be a way for sword wielder of treasure sword level to pass the test. It's impossible for Zhetian Zhendi to set a dead end. Guhan was not infected by Liuyan Ling's pessimism, but calmly analyzed. As he spoke, he ran to the small bar and carefully read the words written on it a few times. The corner of his mouth revealed a smile of understanding. Ling, let's try again. Guhan touched the small bar and said slowly, Hey, why don't you give up? It's useless even if you try a few more times. No one can pluck 50 apples in 3 seconds. Liuyan Ling said weakly. She had already been tortured by this damn test for 4 days. She didn't want to pluck any more apples. It's naturally impossible for one person, but what if it's 3 people? Guhan pursed his lips. If you release Heaven's Inquisition, we'll have 4 people. 3 people together? Liuyan Ling was stunned. You can play like that. Isn't there a limit to one person participating? Since I can stay in the same room with you, why can't we complete the test at the same time? Ji Han knocked on the small bar counter. From the beginning to the end, this instruction did not state that multiple people are not allowed to move together. Do you think so? The result was self-evident. Guhan, Yi Tian, and Liuyan Ling rushed into the apple tree at the same time and plucked the apples in a frenzy. In 3 seconds, a total of 58 apples had fallen into the hands of these 3 people. Then, when the small bar rose again, the long-awaited die finally appeared. This also meant that Guhan and Liuyan Ling had successfully passed the test and could enter the next room. Damn it, this actually works. Liuyan Ling looked at the die and scratched her head in annoyance. Why didn't I think of this test for multiple people? I was actually trapped by such a simple thing for 4 whole days. Don't make things difficult for yourself. Even if you thought of it before I came, you would still have to wait for 4 days. After all, there would only be one person in the entire trial. You wouldn't be able to find anyone to help you. Guhan's words made Liuyan Ling feel much better. That's right, Guhan was right. This was the truth. It was all Guhan's fault for coming too late. If he had come a step earlier, I would have been able to leave this place long ago. Ling, come and take a look here. Guhan suddenly interrupted Liuyan Ling, who was trying hard to push the blame away, and called her over to the side of the die. Ling, what do you think? Why are there 2 die here? Liuyan Ling exclaimed in surprise when she saw the die on the small bar. There were 2 die, one big and one small, on the small bar. This was a situation that had never happened before. Liuyan Ling had passed through no less than 30 rooms and there was only 1 die every time. There had never been a situation where there were 2 die. Is it because there are 2 people in the room now, so there are 2 die? Liuyan Ling voiced out her guess. This guess was very reasonable. In the past, there was only Liuyan Ling, so naturally, there was only 1 die. Now that there was an additional person, Guhan, wouldn't it be normal for there to be 2 die? No, if the dice were given to both of us, then the dice should be the same size, not a big one and a small one. This big one is double the size of the small one. I know the reason for this die. Yi Tian looked at the die and his pupils shrank. He recalled some dusty memories. When Yi Qing encounters something she can't decide, or when she needs to make a choice, she likes to use the die to decide the final result. If the choice only involves her, then she will use a normal-sized die. If it involves 2 people, she will use a bigger die. If it involves the whole team, she will use a specially made die the size of a big watermelon. But this girl just likes to lie to herself. No matter what the result is, she will only choose according to the answer in her heart. She has never been a person who leaves her fate to fate. She just likes to play with fate. So, I'm guessing that Zetian gave you 2 die, 1 big and 1 small, to let you choose for yourselves whether you want to move forward together or alone in the next trial. If you want to move together, you can use the big die. If you want to move alone, you can use the small die. It's that simple. Yi Tian said as he poured alcohol into his mouth like crazy. After explaining, he turned into a stream of light and flew back into his scabbard. Don't bother me for the next 24 hours. If there's a fight, go find your Qingpin. You should also let her exercise a little. Eating meat every day and not exercising, she might not be able to get married. Chapter 378. In the hall of the trial gate, the mystic sword spirit, who was resting on the sofa, suddenly opened his eyes and saw a large group of people in white robes walking in one by one from the tunnel. They came pretty fast. Luo Mi sword spirit muttered. Then, he walked to the front of the white-robed man and stood in front of Luo Mi sword spirit. Your Excellency Luo Mi, long time no see. May Allah bless your health. Effendi Muhammad, I didn't expect you to be the one leading the team this time. Weren't you imprisoned by your sect leader? Why are you released so soon? The mystic sword spirit sneered. Obviously, he didn't like this Effendi. Please be careful with your words, Your Excellency Mystic Sword Spirit. He is a great prophet. You can't use such a disrespectful title like leader. Although Effendi's words were full of dissatisfaction, his face didn't show any expression. Jerusalem has already reached this point. I remember when your sect master had just taken over, even if I called him sect master in front of him, he wouldn't have any objections. What's wrong? Now that your wings have hardened, you think you can stand alone among the humans? The Mystic Sword Spirit didn't even look at Effendi. The transmission array is over there. Let your sword bearers enter the trial ground. Thank you. Effendi nodded at the white-robed sword bearers he brought. All the sword bearers lined up in an orderly manner and entered the trial formation one by one from the quantum transmission array. 27 people. When the last white-robed sword bearer entered the formation, the Mystic Sword Spirit sneered disdainfully. The new generation of your Jerusalem is very strong. There are actually 27 sword bearers who are full of potential and powerful sword bearers. From the looks of it, after 20 years, you will have more than a dozen sword bearers of spirit sword bearers. Previously, in the notice given by Yangjing City to the various base cities, it was very clear that only sword bearers with great potential or strength, who could become a sword bearer of spirit sword bearer in the future, were qualified to enter the trial formation. Yuzhang City was lacking in talent, so they only picked 3 people to enter the array. Yi Wenjun had joined the array halfway, so he did not count. As for Yangjing City, because of the efforts of the major aristocratic families, they had forced some unqualified people into the city against their will. However, those aristocratic families still cared about their reputation, so the disciples they sent out were at least the best among the treasured sword bearers. There were more than 10 of them. On the other hand, Jerusalem had brought 27 treasure sword tier swordbearers. Did they really think that this training array was created by the ancestors of Jerusalem? Therefore, when it saw Jerusalem shamelessly bringing 27 people to participate in the trial, the Confusion Sword Spirit immediately mocked him without holding back. They are the purest lambs of Allah. There is no reason for Allah to let any of them go. Avanti said. This was how the Jerusalem base city behaved. Anyway, if there was a hat, it would be better to put it on Allah's head. The Chaos Sword Spirit still wanted to say something, but in the next moment, a ray of light suddenly shone from the teleportation formation, and then a bewildered swordsman appeared in the teleportation formation. Kung Fu, why did you come out? The Confusion Sword Spirit immediately recognized the swordsman who had been sent out. He was the treasured sword-bearer of Yangjing City, Kung Fu. I am ashamed. I was unable to complete the task set by the training array, so I was directly sent out, Kung Fu replied shamefully when he heard the Confusion Sword Spirit's question. You were sent out so quickly. The Confusion Sword Spirit's expression was a little solemn. Although Kung Fu was the direct descendant of the Kong family, his own strength was among the top in the entire Yangjing City. He was not the kind of swordsman who relied on the power of the aristocratic families to force his way into the team. How could someone as powerful as him fail in just a few minutes? Kung Fu, let me ask you. What is the situation in the formation? Why were you sent out by the training array? One participant has failed and has been sent out of the formation. Gu Han and Liuanian Ling, who were in the training array, suddenly heard sky-shrouding Gendi's words. It turned out that the entire training array had a full-channel system broadcast. Ling, didn't you say that we could have 7 days to study how to complete the trial task? Why was someone sent out so quickly? Gu Han asked. I think it's strange too. Could there be some rules that we haven't discovered? Liuanian Ling shook her head. She turned her attention back to the 2 dice in front of her. One big and one small. Which one do you want to choose? Liuanian Ling's heart was beating a little fast. Although she had given the choice to Gu Han, Liuanian Ling naturally wanted to pass this trial with Gu Han. However, she didn't know how Gu Han would choose. What if he didn't want to be with her? Wasn't she, Ling, sticking her cold face to his warm butt? Wait, why do I feel like something's wrong? When Gu Han heard Liuanian Ling's words, he glanced meaningfully at Liuanian Ling. This caused Liuanian Ling to start panicking. This idiot wouldn't really choose the small die and part ways with me, Would he? I'm afraid you'll starve to death. Ji Han coldly said these words, then very decisively picked up the big die, and threw out a big 6. Damn you! Who would starve to death? Liuyan Ling thought angrily. However, her heart instantly bloomed with joy. Gu Han and Liuyan Ling advanced another 6 squares. Their progress had improved a lot, but they were still surrounded by monotonous empty squares. If someone with a phobia of loneliness were to come here, they would definitely be driven crazy by the environment. I wonder how far away we are from the final destination, Gu Han said blankly after the light wall surrounded them again. If this was a Monopoly game in real life, then the player would have a map of all the squares in real life and the distance to the final destination. Unfortunately, as a chess piece, Gu Han couldn't clearly see his current situation. If we calculate the distance in a straight line, we should still be 427 squares away. Unexpectedly, Liuyan Ling gave Gu Han an answer. Gu Han looked at Liuyan Ling and found that she was holding a handheld computer in her hand. It looked like a tablet computer from before the apocalypse. On the tablet computer, a huge map was clearly displayed. There was a red dot constantly flashing in one of the squares. That should be the square that Liuyan Ling was in. Why do you have such a thing? Ling, Gu Han asked. TSK, I've been here for almost 2 weeks longer than you. Is it strange that I have this map? Liuyan Ling said proudly. To tell you the truth, this is a reward from the item house. The item house is the best square in this trial ground. There's no need to fight, and there's no need for any strange challenges. You just have to draw an item. Unfortunately, my luck isn't good. I've only encountered the item house twice. Ling, let me have a look at your map. Gu Han took the map from Liuyan Ling and studied it carefully. He found that there were a total of 16 starting points on the map. These starting points all started as individual routes. Later on, they began to intersect in pairs. Finally, all the starting points converged into a single route. This was the only route that led to the finishing point. Gu Han's current position was about the first half of the route. There was an intersection point about 10 squares ahead. About 2 routes would intersect at this point and form a combined route. After 2 more combined routes, he would enter the final route. In short, if everything went smoothly and the result was a 6, he would have to cross at least 427 squares and roll the dice 72 times to reach the finishing point. This would take at least 2 or 3 days to complete. Ling, haven't you been here for 2 weeks and completed more than 40 trials? Why are you still stuck at this position? His current position was very far from the finishing point. It was more than 400 squares away. However, it was very close to the starting point, less than 100 squares. It was hard to imagine that Liuyan Ling had only advanced so little after spending 2 weeks. It's my fault, Liuyan Ling said unhappily. I keep encountering teleportation incidents. What can I do when I'm teleported back to the starting point? I was originally less than 200 squares away from the finish line, but in the end, I was teleported back here. Speaking of which, weren't you also teleported to this square? Gu Han was speechless. He was lucky enough to be teleported to a position more than 100 squares away from the starting point after advancing less than 10 squares. If he were to tell Liuyan Ling about this, Liuyan Ling would probably kill him in anger. The quest in the next room was very simple. Both Liuyan Ling and Gu Han were able to deal with it easily. But it was a pity that Gu Han had run out of luck. Unfortunately, Ji Han, who was in charge of throwing, seemed to have run out of luck. After throwing the number 1 several times in a row, he could only move forward 1 grid at a time. Although the trial quests he encountered were not difficult, the speed at which he moved forward suddenly dropped a lot. This continued until Ji Han threw the number 1 again and entered the next grid. Countless cards flew out from the small bar counter and circled around Gu Han and Liuyan Ling. The word event was written on the back of the cards. It was obvious that Gu Han and Fleeting Time had entered the event room again. Chapter 379. Unlucky B****, stop it. Looking at the floating cards in the room, Gu Han was about to draw an event card, but he was stopped by Liuyan Ling. She probably felt that Guhan had thrown a few cards consecutively, which made Liuyan Ling feel completely hopeless about Guhan's luck. Then you do it. It didn't matter to Guhan who drew the card. Guhan didn't care about these details. But soon, Guhan regretted giving Liuyan Ling the opportunity to draw the card. If Guhan drew the card himself, he wouldn't even look at it. He would just pick the card closest to him. It was clean and simple, and it wouldn't even take a second. But for Liuyan Ling to draw the card, it was like a woman putting on makeup. In reality, she took out a compass to measure the position, then drew out the Carlo card to measure the luck, and finally took out the Book of Changes to calculate the metaphysics. In short, she made thousands of calculations and dilly-dallying for about 20 minutes before finally coming to a result. Guhan was a little puzzled. Why didn't he think that Liuyan Ling was so long-winded before? According to the final calculation, it seemed that there were two cards that were the best choices. Liuyan Ling hesitated for a long time, and finally drew the card closer to Guhan. Immediately, the rest of the cards flew into the small bar counter. Event card: encountering injustice. One of you accidentally fell into a manhole and both your legs were broken. Please choose a participant. He will lose the ability to move after 5 throws. What the hell is this? Liuyan Ling was so angry that she dropped the card in her hand on the ground. This was the card that she had painstakingly chosen. She had just said that Guhan was unlucky, and now she was slapping herself in the face. Liuyan Ling was angry. Guhan was expressionless after learning the contents of the card, but Liuyan Ling still felt that every little tadpole on Guhan's body was mocking her. What are you laughing at? It's all your fault. I wouldn't have chosen that card if it wasn't for the fact that it was closer to you. It's all your bad luck. Fleeting time. Ling tried to shift the blame to Yi Ci. Well, you've made your choice, so you have to bear the consequences of your choice. Guhan pulled Liuyan Ling to his side and covered Liuyan Ling's mouth with his palm. A trace of manly breath flew from Guhan's fingers into Liuyan Ling's mouth, and Liuyan Ling suddenly became quiet. Is this the smell of Guhan's stinky guy? I feel a little intoxicated. Aya, there's obviously a bit of sourness in this smell. Liuyan Ling had some small calculations and small fantasies in her heart. Unfortunately, these small calculations and small fantasies didn't last long. They were ruthlessly shattered by Guhan's next sentence. You drew the card, so you have to bear the consequences yourself. Guhan said very calmly. Guhan, what do you mean? Are you going to break my leg? Are you even a man? Fleeting Cold was so angry that his hair stood on end. It was as if fire was about to erupt from his head. It's because I'm a man, so the one who breaks my leg must be you. Guhan said very seriously, but in the ears of Liuyan Ling, it was simply a joke. Are you kidding? Because it's a man, so the one who breaks his leg must be a woman? Since when was there such a logic in this world? Which country's logic came from? The Green Sect. Don't get excited. Ling Guhan pressed his hands on Liuyan Ling's shoulders. I want to hold you, but I don't want you to hold me. Do you understand? What do you mean you hold me and I'll hold you? Liuyan Ling's ears began to turn red. This Guhan, why did he suddenly say such words? Isn't the change a bit too fast? Of course, if your leg is broken, then I have to hold you to continue moving forward. Guhan stroked Liuyan Ling's hair. I'm a man. How can I let you hold me? It's better to kill me. Oh. Liuyan Ling didn't speak. She felt that if she let Guhan hold her all the time, well, she was thinking about some messy things. But obviously, Liuyan Ling didn't want to argue with Guhan just now. Well, I'll take responsibility for my own actions. Let me, Ling, bear the pain of breaking my leg. After saying this, Liuyan Ling felt a distant pain passing through her leg bone. Then, she lost the strength to support her body and began to fall directly to the ground. Guhan reacted quickly. At the moment when Liuyan Ling was about to fall, he directly stretched out his arm to hold Liuyan Ling's waist. He held Liuyan Ling in his arms like a princess, so that Liuyan Ling's small face was pressed against his chest. Sure enough, it's more comfortable to be held. Smelling the scent of Guhan, Liuyan Ling couldn't help but want to fall asleep in his arms. Guhan smiled and released a sword energy to hit the die that appeared again. The die fell to the ground and finally rolled out a 6. It seemed that Guhan's bad luck had run out. However, in the next room, Guhan wasn't so lucky. The trial prompt on the small bar indicated that this was the most basic 3-star combat trial room. When Guhan's opponent, Yuan Ku, appeared, Guhan could only smile bitterly. This time, his opponent was actually an acquaintance. It was the Bronze Saint, Light Fang, who had voluntarily admitted defeat. Oh, what a coincidence. We meet again. Light Fang actually remembered Guhan. When he saw Guhan holding Liuyan Ling, he said enviously, "I haven't seen you for half a day, and you actually managed to hook up with such a beautiful girl." Guhan rolled his eyes. "You're just a memory fragment. What's there to be envious about? Can you hook up with a girl like that? So it's you and I fighting again." Guhan felt that this was pretty good. Previously, Light Fang had retreated without a fight when he met Heaven Yi. If Heaven Yi appeared again, the result would probably be the same. Yeah, my luck is a little bad. I originally wanted to vent my anger by teaching a few sword bearers a lesson. I didn't expect to meet Lady Yi again. Please release Lady Yi. As long as I see her, I can leave. Yes, everything seemed to be going smoothly. As long as he released Heaven Yi, he would be able to win. How simple. However, the prerequisite was that Heaven Yi was willing to fight for Guhan. If Heaven Yi didn't want to fight, then there would be a problem. Therefore, it went without saying that Heaven Yi refused to fight for Guhan. The reason was very good. Heaven Yi seemed to have fallen asleep. When Guhan called out to her through the sword mark, he could only hear the sound of her snoring. As for whether Heaven Yi was really asleep, it was a question of the benevolent and the wise. Forget it, I'll do it myself. Guhan shook his head. He planned to find a place to put Liuyan Ling down and use Heaven Yi to fight. So you're a sword master. No wonder you can control Lady Yi. Seeing Guhan standing against him with his sword, the Bronze Saint Seiya sighed in admiration. Then, he shrugged his shoulders apologetically, "Sorry, but when fighting against us memory fragments, sword bearers are not allowed to fight on their own." Why? Guhan was stunned. He couldn't fight on his own. Because I'm a memory fragment. I originate from the memories of the sword bearers. Light Fang smiled bitterly. Just like how vampires are afraid of light, we memory fragments are most afraid of coming into contact with real humans like you. Your bodies are like a whirlpool. The moment you come into contact with my body, the memories that make up my body will be absorbed into your brain. This way, our memory fragments will naturally weaken. You humans will also become mentally deranged because of the influx of memories from other species. If you're not careful, you might even become mentally ill. That's why the trial formation forbids us memory fragments from coming into contact with humans. We can only fight against your sword lady. If it's possible for your body to come into contact with me, I have the right to activate the formation and throw you out. You'll automatically be judged to have failed. Do you really want to do this? Light Fang's explanation was very detailed. Guhan wasn't stupid. He naturally wasn't willing to be thrown out just like that, so he gave up on fighting. But if he couldn't fight, and Heaven Yi wasn't willing to fight, then who else would be willing to fight? Guhan thought for a moment, then looked at Liuyan Ling in his arms and said, "Ling Ling, release your Heaven's Inquisition. My Heaven Yi isn't willing to fight, and I can't force her. Your Heaven's Inquisition's strength is second only to Heaven Yi and Fishbowl Sword, so defeating this Saint Seiya shouldn't be a problem." Heaven's Inquisition. Liuyan Ling blinked her eyes. When have you ever seen Heaven's Inquisition appear by my side? Indeed, when Liuyan Ling and Guhan were together, Heaven's Inquisition would always quietly follow by Liuyan Ling's side. Just like Qing Pin, it rarely stayed in the scabbard. But ever since he met Liuyan Ling, Guhan hadn't seen Heaven's Inquisition at all. Shu Tianyuan, that coward, should have already told you. I was chased by an earth bear the entire way, and in my panic, I ran into the trial formation. Previously, in order to buy time for me to escape, Heaven's Inquisition risked damaging its blade to buy me 5 seconds of time. Only then could I escape into the formation. Unfortunately, Heaven's Inquisition's blade is already full of cracks, and its durability is probably only around 2%. Before Heaven's Inquisition is repaired, I can't let it come out to fight again," Liu Ling said in a low voice. It seemed like Heaven's Inquisition's injuries made Liu Ling feel very guilty and sad. After all, Heaven's Inquisition had become like this in order to protect Liu Ling. Heaven's Inquisition really can't participate in the battle. Gu Han didn't expect Heaven's Inquisition to be in such a state. Of course, he wouldn't have any ideas on Heaven's Inquisition. But this way, Gu Han, Liu Ling, Heaven's Inquisition, and Heaven Yi, the 4 strongest combatants, couldn't fight against Guang Ya. The only ones who could fight were the ancient sword-grade Qing Pin sword and Liu Ling's Yixian sword. The Yixian sword was directly eliminated by Gu Han. Once it was released, it might fight Liu Ling for 300 rounds. Why would it be willing to fight for Liu Ling? In other words, the only one who could fight was Qing Pin. Gu Han narrowed his eyes and grabbed the hilt of Qing Pin's sword. He pulled her out of the scabbard, and with a flash of light, the cute Qing Pin appeared once again. She was grabbed by the soft flesh on her neck by Gu Han. She looked at Gu Han with puffy eyes and asked, "Gu Han, is it time to eat?" But the strange thing was, it seemed like Qing Pin wasn't the only one who was pulled out. The other tiny thing was also hugging Qing Pin tightly, like a bunch of incense sticks. Together with Qing Pin, they were pulled out by Gu Han. Chapter 380. Little Yun, why are you here? Gu Han was completely stunned when he saw the little lowly who appeared with Qing Pin. She was Gu Han's sister, Ji Yun. She had also entered the trial array. Ji Han remembered clearly that before he left Ji Yun in the campsite and asked the 2 famed sword-rank swordbearers from the Yangjing headquarter city to look after her. The 2 famed swordsmen agreed very readily. Although he was still a little worried, Gu Han had no choice but to leave Ji Yun in the camp. Why would she suddenly appear with Qing Pin? This was too illogical. Gu Han suddenly remembered that after he left the camp, Qing Pin had said that she had left something in the camp and had to go back to get it. Gu Han did not suspect anything. Naturally, Qing Pin had gone back. When Qing Pin returned, she turned into a stream of light and entered Gu Han's scabbard. At this time, Gu Han felt a little strange. Qing Pin did not like to stay in the scabbard. Her favorite place was the baby pouch in front of Gu Han's chest. Because the sword maiden could not appear in the form of a young girl, Gu Han was about to persuade Qing Pin to enter the scabbard first. He did not expect Qing Pin to enter the scabbard of her own accord. Although he was puzzled, it saved Gu Han a lot of time and saliva. Gu Han did not think too much about it and directly entered the trial array. It was only when he brought Qing Pin out that he realized something was wrong. It seemed that Qing Pin had returned to the camp not because she had forgotten something, but because she wanted to bring Ji Yun with her. Rushing into the scabbard was not out of conscience, but to quickly cover up Ji Yun's tracks. Poor Gu Han now understood what had happened. What's going on? Why is little Yun in your scabbard? Ji Yun grabbed the poor girl's neck and lifted her up to the same height as his face. He questioned her fiercely. Gu Han, Qing Pin is hungry. Let's eat first. Qing Pin wants to eat braised pork and crispy pork. Qing Pin rolled her eyes and began to use her usual cute skills. She stared at Gu Han with her big watery eyes full of pity and pleading until Gu Han softened. If it was in the past, if poor Qing used this trick, Ji Yuhan would most likely comply. Although poor Qing loved to cause trouble, she had never caused any big trouble. She would act cute, pout, and get away with it. Ji Yuhan would not really do anything to poor Qing. But this time was different. This time, Qing Pin actually brought Ji Yun in. This was a dangerous place that could lose one's life. Wait, it seemed that even if Ji Yun came in, nothing would happen. This was a trial that Zhe Tianzhendi had set up to train the younger generation. Although there was some danger, there was no fatal danger. This could be seen from the series of trials just now. All of Zhe Tianzhendi's trials were very measured. They would not involve the life of the sword-bearer. Even if they did not pass the trial, they would be sent out politely or wait 7 days for them to leave on their own. There was nothing fatal inside. The simplest example was this memory fragment in front of him. Saint Seiya Yuan Ku, Light Fang, as the target of the battle, could only watch helplessly as Guhan dealt with this mess. He did not have the slightest intention of making a move. If Light Fang attacked at this time, at the very least, Guhan would be in trouble. It could be seen that Light Fang was also afraid of harming a human's life, so he did not make a move. Instead, he quietly waited for Guhan to finish dealing with this mess. This was very obvious. This large formation was a relatively safe place. As long as Jiyu Yun looked after it well, there was still a guarantee of safety. Damn you, Guhan, you're hurting Qingpin. Suddenly, Qingpin's expression became a little sad. His eyes and nose were all squeezed together. Only then did Guhan notice that he had probably pinched Qingpin's neck for too long. This cute guy was really hurting. This time, Guhan was starting to feel a little heartache. Plus, Jiyu Yun's safety shouldn't be a problem. With a cold snort, he turned the pinch into a hug and hugged Qingpin. Stinky Guhan, I'll bite you. The indignant Qingpin began her revenge. She lowered her head and fiercely bit Guhan's arm. She was really strong, so much so that Guhan felt like his flesh was about to be bitten off. Where did this cheater get so much strength? Guhan wanted to shake off Qingpin's teeth, but he found that she was really strong. If he forcefully shook her off, he reckoned that Qingpin would fall to the ground. Helpless, Guhan could only use his trump card. Guhan bent his head, stuck out his tongue, and gently licked the inside of Qingpin's ear. Then, all the hair on Qingpin's body stood up, and every muscle began to twitch slightly. He rolled his eyes, loosened his mouth, and drool began to drip down. This was the absolute weakness of Qingpin that Guhan found when he and Qingpin were together. As long as he lightly licked it, Qingpin would lose all fighting ability, and his whole body would be weak and twitch. Well, it felt like he was doing that. So, Guhan would not use this trick unless he was forced to. This made Guhan feel a strong sense of evil. So comfortable. Guhan. I want more. Qingpin kept drooling, and kept repeating this sentence. This was the reason why Guhan felt like evil. After giving Qingpin a lick, Qingpin seemed to have become a Lolita, or a Lolita. In short, this state of Qingpin made Guhan uncomfortable all over. Guhan bent down and picked up Jiyu Yun from the ground. At this time, Jiyu Yun should have recovered from her stiff state, and her body became soft again. Her eyes were rolling, and no one knew what she was thinking. Tell me, what's going on? Guhan held Qingpin in one hand and Jiyu Yun in the other. He stared at the two of them seriously. Jiyu Yun, how did you get into Qingpin's scabbard? This was the question that Guhan wanted to figure out the most, because it seemed that Jiyu Yun had followed him into the trial array through Qingpin's scabbard. This posed a very serious problem. Why was Jiyu Yun able to stay in Qingpin's scabbard? This was a very serious problem, and it might even change the structure of the entire human world. The technology of dimensional pockets had been developed for more than 700 years. From the invention of the first dimensional pocket to the present day, countless scientists had wanted to achieve an unprecedented goal: to put humans or animals into a dimensional pocket, put them in it alive, and then release them alive. If this goal could be achieved, humans' mobility, escapability, combatability, and all other aspects of abilities would be greatly improved. The simplest example was to send a swordbearer who could move at high speed and shuttle through the void to sneak into Yuan Ku's base camp, and then release the swordbearer in a large dimensional pocket to launch an explosive surprise attack on Yuan Ku. Before Yuan Ku in other areas could react, the swordbearer would be beheaded with absolute power. Another example was when escaping. As long as each swordbearer rolled up their dimensional pocket, they could carry all the humans around them. The success rate of a swordbearer's escape was definitely much higher than that of ordinary people. In this way, when the Great Invasion could not be resisted, ordinary humans with a mortality rate as high as 99% could still have a chance of survival. Once the dimensional pocket could carry living creatures freely, the entire human social structure and other aspects would be strengthened, and the possibility of humans winning would be greatly increased. Therefore, for a long time, human scientists and forging grandmasters had invested a lot of energy into this problem. However, There had been no major progress for 700 years. As long as a living creature entered the dimensional pocket, it would die within 0.01 seconds without any luck. Until now, scientists were no longer willing to research this topic, as the results of the research were destined to fail. Scientists asserted that unless a human could understand the nature of dimensional space and analyze its structure, it would be possible to find a way to allow humans to survive in dimensional pockets. However, the problem was that if humans could analyze the structure of the dimensional space, they would be able to strangle the source of the dimensional rift, preventing Yuan Ku from entering the human world through the dimensional rift. As such, Yuan Ku would die in the hands of humans sooner or later, and the world could return to its original peaceful state. Why would they need the dimensional pocket to escape? When Guhan suddenly realized that Jiyu Yun had run out of the Qingpin sword scabbard, he was shocked. So was Liuyan Ling, who was behind Guhan. She was also staring at Guhan and Jiyu Yun, waiting for Jiyu Yun's answer. The answer to this question was too crucial and important for humans. This was because the Sword Lady's scabbard and the dimensional pocket were essentially products created by the same principle. The space inside was the same as the space inside the dimensional pocket. They were both dimensional spaces. If Jiyu Yun could enter the scabbard and come out alive, she would definitely be able to enter the dimensional pocket and come out alive. The question that had troubled humans for 700 years could finally be answered. If there were any Nobel Prizes in this world, as long as Guhan reported this discovery to the base city, this year's Nobel Prize would definitely be Guhan's. No one would dare to snatch this award from Guhan. Unfortunately, in the face of Guhan's questioning, Jiyu Yun just shook her head blankly. I don't know either. I just felt that I could go in, so I went in. No matter how Guhan asked, Jiyu Yun always gave the same answer and didn't say another word. Hey, I say, are you guys done discussing? It's very awkward for me to be here. Saint Seiya at the side urged helplessly. He had just struck a pose and stood there for an entire chapter. This was really too awkward, and he would rather not appear. Forget it, we'll talk about this later. Guhan put Jiyu Yun aside and placed Qingpin on the ground. Qingpin, I'll leave this Saint Seiya to you. Just as Yi Tian had said, Qingpin's life was too comfortable, and she needed some battles to hone herself. Chapter 381. Although Qingpin was Guhan's favorite sword mistress, it was undeniable that Qingpin was also the most useless sword mistress in Guhan's hands. For a long time, Qing Pauper had at most been used by Jiyu Han in his original form, but he had never really defeated any Yuanko. That was because Qing Pauper's swordsmanship was terrible. If Qing Pauper went up to fight, it would be no different from sending himself to death. Therefore, Guhan decided to let Qingpin fight this time. This Saint Seiya could be regarded as Qingpin's best opponent. Saint Seiya were warriors who had trained hard since they were young. Their martial arts skills were stronger than most Yuan Ku. They could teach Qingpin to be a sword mistress. More importantly, the Yuan Ku in the trial formation would not really hurt the sword mistress. They would stop fighting after breaking Qingpin's personal shield. In this way, they could guarantee Qingpin's absolute safety. This was what Liuyan Ling told Guhan. This was the experience she gained after fighting many Yuan Ku's memory fragments for so many days. However, there were some things that Guhan felt were a little strange, but he didn't point it out. Are we really going to fight? Qingpin is a good child who loves peace. Qingpin had been at a disadvantage in the limited number of battles she had. Although Guhan had trained her in swordsmanship before, it was a pity that when this child practiced swordsmanship, her mind was probably filled with braised pork. Therefore, the effect of the training was naturally unimaginable. Madam, I'm sorry. Seeing that he could finally fight, Guang Ye's heart was filled with excitement. He had been standing there awkwardly for more than 20 minutes, watching Jiyu Han, a young girl, and two lolis doing something to each other. One could imagine the frustration in his heart. Greetings. Qingpin also changed the Qingpin sword in her hand and imitated Guangya's salute. Then, she shouted in a childish voice and suddenly rushed towards Guangya. Oh, this child's skills are not bad. She's full of vigor. A second ago, Guang Ye thought so, but in the next second, he gave himself 2 hard slaps in the face. Before Qingju could reach Guang Ye's side to launch an attack, he lost his balance and fell face first onto the ground. He fell face first onto the ground and fell face first. When she raised her head, her face was bruised and looked very pitiful. Guhan, Qingpin is injured. Qingpin looked back at Guhan pitifully. Guhan, Qingpin was ambushed by this despicable person. Qingpin is dizzy and her leg is broken. Come and avenge Qingpin. Qingpin's words made a certain Yuan Ku raise his eyebrows. What a joke. I, Guangya, can swear to the heavens that I didn't even touch Qingpin, let alone injure Qingpin. These are all shameful slander. Of course, even ghosts wouldn't believe Qingpin's nonsense. Facing Qingpin's request, Guhan decisively turned around and didn't even look at Qingpin. He used his actions to answer Qingpin's question. All right, I've had enough. Saint Seiya also has dignity. Guangya was starting to get angry. Ever since he became a memory fragment, he hadn't felt such anger in a long time. Take my Pegasus Meteor Punch. A classic Pegasus Meteor Punch smashed into Qingpin, who was still trying to act cute. Countless fist shadows danced around Qingpin's body. Then, Qingpin let out a blood-curdling scream and allowed Guangya to attack without any resistance. It wasn't until Qingpin's shield shattered that Guangya withdrew his fist and disappeared from the room. Challenge failed. Sky-covering Jendi coldly announced Qingpin's defeat. Stinky Guhan, bad Guhan, trash Guhan. Wah! The poor man broke free from Guang Ye's fist, then began to wail and curse at the annoying Guang Han. Qingpin cried for half an hour. Guhan didn't pay attention to her and didn't do anything. He just stood there and let Qingpin cry. He didn't respond or make any movements. Don't think that Guhan was heartless. This was actually the best way to educate a child. If a child cried and you comforted him with all kinds of promises to make him happy, then you would be harming him and nurturing his prince or princess temperament. One could imagine how his life in society would be like in the future. On the contrary, if you beat and scolded him when he cried, then you would be the so-called wolf parents who spoke with their fists. That was even more wrong. Perhaps 1 or 2 children with strong hearts would be able to get into Tsinghua University under this kind of strict education. However, most of them would become rebellious during puberty and become a delinquent in society. They would mess around in society every day and never go home. At that time, they would realize that they had made a grave mistake. Therefore, the best way was to let this brat cry alone. When he was tired of crying, it would be time for him to admit defeat. At that time, he would realize that crying wouldn't solve the problem. He could only rely on his own strength. Sure enough, after crying for half an hour, she finally stopped sobbing and stood up from the ground. At this time, Guhan, who had been silent all this time, suddenly turned around and walked to Qingpin's side and hugged her. How is it? You must be tired of crying. Guhan touched Qingpin's eyes and helped her wipe away the dried tears. Looking at Qingpin's red and swollen eyes, Guhan's heart began to ache. To be honest, Qingpin didn't seem like a sword mistress. She was more like a willful child. No, Qingpin can still cry for another 300 rounds. Qingpin sobbed and said unwillingly, Qingpin, have you forgotten what happened in the Miling mountain range? Guhan's voice was long and deep. Qingpin, that was the first time I felt powerless. I was powerless to protect you. Qingpin, I think you also felt powerless that day, right? Perhaps one day, you will only be able to watch me leave you because you don't have the strength. Qingpin, are you willing to see that day come? Guhan looked at Qingpin's red and swollen eyes. His voice was filled with sorrow. No, Qingpin, don't ever leave Guhan. Never. Qingpin shook her head with all her might. Then, she jumped down from Guhan's arms and said in a childish but firm voice, Qingpin must protect Guhan. Qingpin, don't ever leave Guhan. All right, Qingpin and I will never be separated. These were Guhan's most sincere words. Guhan drew his heavenly sword from its scabbard and jumped in front of Qingpin. In one breath, he performed 3 sword techniques in one go. Watch closely, Qingpin. As long as you can learn these 3 sword techniques, you will be able to defeat that annoying Yuan Ku. Guhan said. It turned out that he had performed this sword technique so that Qingpin could learn how to deal with Saint Seiya. This sword technique is too strange. Liuyan Ling, who had been watching from the sidelines, stared at the heavenly sword in Guhan's hands. Her mind kept recalling the sword technique that Guhan had just used, and a strange feeling welled up in her heart. This shouldn't be a sword technique at all. It's just 3 randomly put together moves. If I were to face these 3 moves, they wouldn't be able to hurt me at all. Instead, I would be able to target my weak points and kill them, Liuyan Ling silently analyzed. She was from the Liu clan, and her attainments in sword techniques were among the best. There was no way that Guhan's 3 moves could escape Liuyan Ling's eyes. But that can't be right. Since Guhan taught this sword technique to Qingpin to deal with that saint, it can't be some randomly made-up sword technique. He couldn't have taught it to Qingpin. There must be some secret to this sword technique. Liuyan Ling repeatedly recalled the 3 sword techniques that she had seen. Finally, she had a flash of inspiration, and a look of surprise appeared on her face. So that's how it is. So that's what Guhan was planning. That Yuan Ku will be in for a good time, Liuyan Ling pondered. But it must have been hard on Guhan. In order to achieve his goal, he actually adapted these 3 sword techniques on the spot. I can't understand it for a while. Thinking of this, Liuyan Ling began to feel annoyed again. Even with her identity as the direct descendant of the Liu clan, it took her a few minutes to understand all this. These were sword techniques that Guhan made up on the spot. Didn't this mean that she, Liuyan Ling, was inferior to that annoying Guhan? So Liuyan Ling was a little annoyed that she was inferior to an outsider. But immediately, Liuyan Ling felt secretly delighted. Because in this way, it seemed that some old fellows had lost many reasons to stop her from being together with Guhan. On the other side, Guhan and Qingpin's lessons were still going on. When Qingpin really decided to learn something, the potential that erupted from him made even Guhan afraid. In less than 5 minutes, Qingpin had learned 90% of the sword technique that Guhan had shown him. The remaining 10% was only because Qingpin's body was too small, and he could not use some of the details of the sword technique. So, after Guhan tailored Qingpin's body, Qingpin successfully learned all 3 sword techniques. He could even vaguely see some signs of sublimation. Qingpin had actually sublimated the sword technique with his own instincts. This was a very impressive talent. This meant that Qingpin's talent in swordsmanship was even greater than Guhan's. Let's begin, Qingpin. Guhan placed his hand on the small bar counter again. Qingpin looked at Guhan and nodded vigorously. Then, Guhan tapped the small bar counter, and the light wall opened up again. Saint Seiya from before, Light Tooth, appeared in the room again. What's wrong? Have you still decided to let Lady Yi be my opponent? Light Tooth naturally thought that after he had beaten up that young sword lady, Lady Yi, it was only natural that he would switch to Lady Yi. However, the one standing in front of Light Tooth was still that little lowly, Qingpin. Young lady, you should go back and switch with Lady Yi. I will immediately admit defeat and leave. Light Tooth said helplessly. He did not want to waste his time on Qingpin at all. Qingpin has already mastered an unparalleled divine technique. Despicable Yuan Ku, eat Qingpin's unparalleled, heroic, invincible, 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 and invincible first form of Qingpin's godly sword. Qingpin smoothly spat out a long string of lines. Hey, you're too bored. Why do you have to teach Qingpin this stupid thing? Liuyan Ling was speechless. I didn't teach him, it's all the television's fault. Guhan also looked helpless. Chapter 382. Pegasus Meteor Fist. Seeing Qingpin recklessly attack again, the Saint Seiya decided to use his ultimate move to send this little lowly on her way. The Pegasus Meteor Fist was the ultimate move of the Saint Seiya of the Pegasus constellation, which Guangye had learned from his master, Xingye. According to Xingye, the Pegasus Meteor Fist could launch hundreds of supersonic punches per second along the Pegasus constellation. Each punch had the power of a million-ton meteorite, and its speed surpassed the speed of sound. Therefore, the enemy would first feel the shockwave before hearing the sound. Before the sound could be heard, the shockwave would hit the target, so it was unavoidable. Moreover, the power and speed would vary according to the user's strength. The above information was from Audiobook. It sounded awesome, right? Each punch had the power of a million-ton meteorite. Logically speaking, with such a punch, the entire Changyang mountain would probably explode. Therefore, this was just Xingye blowing his own trumpet to scare the enemy. It was just like Cao Cao's 800,000 troops at the Battle of Red Cliffs. In reality, including the surrendered troops in Jingzhou, he only had about 150,000 troops. Cao Cao's actual attacking troops were at most 80,000 troops. Although the power of the Pegasus Meteor Fist was greatly exaggerated, and it was impossible for each punch to have the power of 1,000,000 tons, it was still at least 1 or 2 tons. At the same time, Guangye could launch at least 10 punches per second at a speed below the speed of sound. This was enough to kill any treasured sword mistress. As Guangye's Pegasus Meteor Fist continuously attacked Qingpin, dust flew into the air, and the ground began to shake violently as if there was an earthquake. There were even cracks that extended from the location of the battle to Guhan's feet. Haha, little lady, you should just admit defeat and switch to Lady Etienne. After attacking for about half a minute, Guangye stopped, panting heavily. The Pegasus Meteor Fist was powerful, but it also consumed a lot of energy, and it consumed even more energy from the pocket universe. After using the Pegasus Meteor Punch for half a minute, the Light Tooth's small universe had already dimmed by about half. This meant that the Light Tooth had already lost about half of its small universe's power. On the other hand, Qingpin's condition wasn't much better. Her body was covered in dust, and her originally smooth and cute face was covered in bruises. Her left arm was bent strangely, which meant that Qingpin's left arm had been seriously fractured and twisted. Fortunately, although Qingpin's personal shield was full of cracks, like the glass screen of a mobile phone that had fallen to the ground, the personal shield was still there. That was enough. This meant that Qingpin could still fight. This was a very impressive achievement. Previously, when Qingpin faced Guangye's attacks, she couldn't fight back at all. She could only let Guangye's fist attack hit her personal shield non-stop. Guangye didn't even need 2 to 3 seconds to break Qingpin's personal shield. But this time, Qingpin resisted for a full 30 seconds. Relying on the 3 sword techniques that Guhan had just taught Qingpin, Qingpin's strength increased by more than 10 times in one go, and she survived Guangye's brutal attacks. Very impressive, little lady. Guangye's gaze towards Qingpin was no longer filled with disregard and helplessness like before. His eyes were filled with fighting spirit, and his entire body gradually became hot-blooded. This was the attitude he had when facing his opponent seriously. Little lady, I didn't expect that in the short span of an hour, your strength would increase so much, to be able to withstand my Pegasus Saint Seiya's complete shorekill technique, Pegasus Meteor Fist. But that's all you can do. As long as my fist is still moving, as long as my holy garment is still there, as long as my fighting spirit and my hot-bloodedness are still there, I can use Pegasus Meteor Fist without limit. And you won't be able to withstand a second attack from me. Little lady, do you still want to persevere? Guangye suddenly let out a thunderous roar. You definitely won't be able to withstand my Pegasus Meteor Fist again. Qingpin didn't say anything, but instead took out a crunch and stuffed it into his mouth. Using those sword techniques just now made Qingpin hungry, so he quickly ate something high in protein to replenish his strength. Then bear the wrath of Athena. Eat my Pegasus Meteor Fist. Guangye was agitated by Qingpin's attitude, and he let out the trademark Chinibya roar of a Saint Seiya. Then, his battle strength soared, and a sky full of fist shadows appeared in the sky once again. The powerful Pegasus Meteor Fist was displayed in front of Qingpin once again, and this time, Qingpin's protective shield definitely couldn't withstand Guangye's Pegasus Meteor Fist. In an instant, Qingpin was in absolute danger. However, the sky full of fists suddenly collapsed on their own before they could even touch Qingpin. Yes, the fists collapsed on their own. Guangye, who was attacking, suddenly knelt on the ground. His forehead was dripping with hot beads of sweat, and his fists were constantly bleeding scarlet blood. Why are my fists like this? Guang Huaiyi said in disbelief. If one took a closer look at Guang Huaiyi's fists, they would discover that they were densely covered in some small veins. If one didn't look closely, one would think that these veins were Guang Huaiyi's own fingerprints. At first, Guang Huaiyi thought so too, so he could use the Pegasus Meteor Fist without any qualms. However, the moment the power of the small universe filled his fists, the fingerprint-like veins instantly exploded. Guang Huaiyi's fists exploded like tomatoes, and blood flowed continuously from his fists. Baddie, you've finally seen Qingpin's power. Seeing his opponent kneeling on the ground powerlessly, Guang Huaiyi didn't even dare to use his hands to support his body, because the moment his hands touched the ground, the intense pain would be unforgettable to anyone who experienced it. Let me ask you, what did you do to my fists? Guang Huaiyi gritted his teeth and asked hatefully. Idiot, you can't even tell? Then the kind Qingpin will tell you. Qingpin began to explain proudly. Yes, according to all novels, movies, and anime, the villain had to explain the ins and outs of the story to the protagonist. Or he had to explain the principles behind his moves to the protagonist, and how powerful they were. Oh, this was a very normal thing, and there was nothing to complain about. Guhan said that your fists look very powerful, and you can throw more than 10 punches in a second. The power is terrifying, but it's not a power you can control. Your willpower and thoughts can't control your fists at all. But in order to master the Pegasus Meteor Fist, you used an opportunistic method. That is, you didn't even consider using your thoughts to control your fists, but used your muscle memory to control your fists. You practiced the same fist path tens of thousands, or even hundreds of thousands, of times, so that your muscles could remember the Pegasus Meteor Fist, and then use the Pegasus Meteor Fist. So, this isn't your fist technique at all. You're just using a fixed routine, and the landing points of your fists are all traceable. So, Guhan customized a set of sword moves for Qingpin. As long as Qingpin uses these sword moves according to the routine, he can perfectly block all of your attacks. The wounds on your fists are caused by my Qingpin sword's attacks on your fists. If it weren't for your high defense, and your skin being as hard as iron, Qingpin would have already chopped off your fists. Lu. Qingpin finished explaining, and naughtily stuck out his tongue. So that's how it is. So you've already seen through me. Guang Huaiyi smiled bitterly. But I have to correct you. I've really mastered the Pegasus Meteor Fist, and I can also control my fists. Unfortunately, I'm just a memory fragment. When I faced Lady Yi, I only used the Pegasus Meteor Fist once before I was defeated. So, the memory fragment could only use this routine once. If it weren't for this, you wouldn't have been able to defeat me. Oh. Qingpin nodded his head forcefully, indicating that he agreed with Guang Huaiyi's words. However, he immediately stabbed Guang Huaiyi in the chest. But you still lost. You lost to the powerful Qingpin. Come, you must want to know what powerful sword technique you lost to, right? Then, Qingpin will be merciful and tell you. This is the unparalleled, heroic, invincible, and invincible first form of Qingpin's godly sword. Qingpin arrogantly recited the name of his technique again. It seemed like Qingpin really liked the name of this technique. She actually recited it without missing a single word. To think that she could remember such a long name without making a single mistake. No, I can't lose to such a stupid technique. Little lady, I want to show you the true strength of a saint. Burn, my little universe. Guang Huaiyi's entire body seemed to start burning. A raging willpower surged out of his body, and a suffocating force gradually gathered on his fist. This was the ultimate technique of a saint. Burning one's own universe would allow one to obtain godlike strength that was several times or even tens of times greater than one's own strength. Go. My fist. Pegasus Meteor Fist. It appeared. The ultimate technique of the Pegasus Saint Seiya, Pegasus Meteor Fist. This was a powerful technique that allowed a saint to burn his own universe and gather all the power of his fists onto a single point. With this technique, The power of the Pegasus Meteor Fist could be increased by tens of thousands of times. This formed the ultimate technique, Pegasus Meteor Fist. Stop. If you use this technique, your fist will be completely crippled. From then on, you will never be able to use your fist again. Guhan saw this Pegasus Meteor Fist and became nervous. Of course, Guhan wouldn't worry about whether a fist from a memory fragment could be used again. What he was worried about was Qingpin's safety. This Pegasus Meteor Fist was something that Qingpin couldn't block no matter what. In the face of absolute power, Qingpin's sword had already lost the ability to resist. What was even more frightening was that this fist was executed by Guang Yi by burning his own universe. It was an ultimate technique that surpassed Guang Yi's strength by a few hundred times. It was impossible for Guang Yi to use this ultimate technique as freely as the Pegasus Meteor Fist from before. If Qingpin took this attack head-on, then there was a 99% chance that Qingpin would be broken under this attack. Note that it was broken, not shattered. Once Qingpin was broken, he could only return to the sword burial grounds and wait for a few hundred years to revive again. This was something that Guhan absolutely wouldn't allow. At this critical moment. Let's read the next chapter. Chapter 383. In the face of the Pegasus Comet Fist, Guhan was powerless. At that moment, Guangya had already ignited his own universe. The speed of the Pegasus Comet Fist was several times faster than the speed of sound. Guhan would not be able to catch up to this speed, no matter what. Qingpin, return to your sword. In a moment of desperation, Guhan wanted Qingpin to return to his side. Although this was equivalent to admitting defeat, Qingpin's safety could be guaranteed. However, before Guhan's command could reach Qingpin's side, he felt the connection between him and Qingpin's sword mark break. Guhan could no longer control Qingpin. Qingpin. Guhan pulled out his heavenly sword at the fastest speed in his life. He wanted to rush in front of Qingpin before Qingpin's attack could reach him, but as mentioned before, the speed of this punch was not something that Guhan could catch up to. At that moment, no one could save Qingpin. Everything depended on Qingpin. Damn it, it's too fast. Slow down your fist. At this critical moment, Qingpin was not thinking about how to dodge Guangya's sure-kill attack. Instead, he was thinking about how to slow down his opponent's fist. What a joke. Do you think my fist will slow down if I slow it down? Guangya sneered. In a thousandth of a second, Guangya's Pegasus Comet Fist approached the tip of Qingpin's nose. The fist was about to smash into Qingpin's head. Then, there was nothing. Guangya felt his fist hit empty air. Then, Qingpin hopped away from him like a little rabbit. How could this be? Could this little sword lady's movement speed have already reached the speed of light? Guangya was shocked. His Pegasus Comet Fist could reach his opponent in a thousandth of a second. Yet, Qingpin had easily escaped. He had even used a taunting method like a rabbit to escape. To be able to do this, Qingpin's movement speed had to be at a speed of 1/10,000th or even 1/10th of a second. But could Qingpin really have this kind of speed? Naturally, it was impossible. In the eyes of Guhan and Liuyan Ling, Qingpin's escape speed was no different from a kindergartner jumping a rabbit. Qingpin had to spend at least 5 seconds to completely escape Guangya's attack range, so it wasn't that Qingpin's movement speed was extremely fast. Instead, it was that Guangya's punching speed had turned into that of a tortoise. At this moment, time around Guangya seemed to have slowed down by tens of thousands of times. He was like a female teacher in a certain time-stop series in Japan before the Great Calamity, frozen in the position of punching, motionless, but if one observed carefully, they would discover that Guangya was actually still moving. It was just that his speed was on the order of millimeters per second. Eat my Qingpin godly sword, first form. Qingpin's sword, which had escaped from Guangya, was now facing an opponent who had almost been frozen in time. Naturally, she wanted to take revenge ruthlessly. She used her Qingpin sword to stab a few holes in her opponent's back. Who asked you to bully the cute Qingpin, and to hit Qingpin's beautiful face? Even Guhan couldn't hit Qingpin's face. Qingpin will stab you to death, stab you to death. Ah! Guangya felt a sharp pain in his waist. Although Qingpin was not tall, the attack power of Qingpin's sword was not just for show. The intense pain caused Guangya to instinctively twist his body. The speed at which he twisted his body was very fast, almost instantaneously. It seemed that Guangya had already recovered his speed, freeing himself from the strange frozen state of time. I've recovered. At this moment, Guangya realized that it was not Qingpin's speed that had changed, but his own had slowed down. What a terrifying ability, to actually be able to reduce my speed to this extent. A few drops of sweat appeared on Guangya's forehead. This ability was really too frightening, even more frightening than the heavenly sword. This is Qingpin's ultimate technique? Liuyan Ling dragged her broken leg as she crawled to Guhan's side. Qingpin's ultimate technique is actually to control the flow of time. It's simply unimaginable that this is the ultimate technique of an ancient sword maiden. This kind of ultimate technique, even if it was used by an immortal sword maiden, it would still be a super valuable skill. Naturally, Liuyan Ling thought that the skill that Qingpin had just used was Qingpin's ultimate technique, because the effect of this skill was really too awesome. TSK, looks like the ancient sword record will have to be rearranged next time. With your Qingpin, my Yixian no longer has the face to stay in the number 1 position in the ancient sword record. Liuyan Ling sighed with some jealousy. She thought a little more than Guangya. Guangya thought that it was a speed reduction skill, but Liuyan Ling thought that it was a time skill. Any skill that had anything to do with time was an incomparably powerful sword maiden. Among ancient sword maidens and artifact sword maidens, she had never heard of any sword maiden having a time-type skill. Moreover, it was a combat skill with a heaven-defying effect like time reduction. For an immortal sword maiden, this kind of skill was extremely good. With such a powerful skill, Qingpin was not something that the Yixian, who was not under Liuyan Ling's control, could compare to. Qingpin was undoubtedly the number 1 sword maiden in the ancient sword ranking. You're wrong, Ling Qingpin's skill is not a time control ultimate technique. Guhan shook his head after hearing Liuyan Ling's words. Nonsense, this is clearly a time control ultimate technique. There's no mistake about it. Liuyan Ling said mockingly. Are you also like that idiot Saint Seiya, thinking that Qingpin's skill is a speed reduction skill? No. Guhan smiled. What I'm saying is that Qingpin's skill is not her ultimate technique. I used up all the sword scar dust in my hands and only managed to push Qingpin down to the 3rd stage. How could she have an ultimate technique to use? You're saying that this is Qingpin's basic skill or advanced skill? Liuyan Ling's jaw dropped in disbelief. Then how overpowered must her ultimate technique be? No, you're wrong again. Ling Qingpin's basic and advanced skills are not these, Guhan denied again. Although I can't be sure, this should be Qingpin's swordsmanship characteristic. Swordsmanship characteristic. Liuyan Ling didn't know what to say. Every sword maiden had their own swordsmanship characteristic based on their swordsmanship. Generally speaking, martial sword maidens focused on swordsmanship, Confucian sword maidens focused on defense, murderous sword maidens focused on offense, kingly sword maidens focused on status, demonic sword maidens focused on spirit, and there were some rare sword maidens like Buddhist sword maidens and human sword maidens. Although there wasn't much information on their swordsmanship characteristic, humans could basically confirm that Buddhist sword maidens focused on healing, and human sword maidens focused on heaven and earth. P.S. The setting of the swordsmanship characteristic might conflict with the previous sword maiden's swordsmanship characteristics. The author apologizes for this. The author made some discrepancies in the settings at the beginning, which led to this phenomenon. The author was a little careless in the settings at the beginning, so I apologize to all the readers here. In the future, the swordsmanship characteristic will be based on this setting. However, I've never heard of any sword maidens whose swordsmanship characteristic was related to time. If that's the case, then Qingpin is the first sword maiden in the world whose swordsmanship characteristic is related to time. Then what's Qingpin's swordsmanship characteristic? Could Qingpin be a human Dao sword maiden? Liuyan Ling asked curiously. In her heart, there was a 50% chance that Qingpin was a human Dao sword maiden. This was because there was only one human Dao sword maiden to date, and the swordsmanship characteristic of the human Dao sword maiden was the hardest to determine. Perhaps the characteristic of the human Dao sword maiden included time. No, Qingpin isn't a human Dao sword maiden. Gu Han denied Liuyan Ling's guess once again. Qingpin's swordsmanship has been determined from the beginning. She's a genuine murderous Dao sword maiden. Little sword maiden, that should be your ultimate technique, right? Just like Liuyan Ling, Guang Huaiye also assumed that what Qingpin had just used was her ultimate technique. I know. Sword maidens' ultimate techniques are extremely restrictive. Within a short period of time, you won't be able to use that ultimate technique that slowed me down again. Guang Huaiye roared as he discovered Qingpin's weakness. You won't be able to use your ultimate technique a second time, but I can use Pegasus Comet Fist again. You won't be able to defeat me. Have a good taste of the fear of Pegasus Comet Fist. Logically speaking, if that was Qingpin's ultimate technique, then Guang Huaiye's guess was extremely reasonable. Usually, ultimate techniques had a cooldown period of at least 5 minutes, and a sword maiden wouldn't be able to use her ultimate technique repeatedly within a short period of time. However, the problem was that this wasn't Qingpin's ultimate technique at all. Instead, it was Qingpin's swordsmanship characteristic. Therefore, when Guang Huaiye used Pegasus Comet Fist again, he was horrified to discover that he had entered a tortoise-like time deceleration. He could only leave himself wide open, allowing Qingpin to leave a few more bleeding holes on his body. This is Qingpin's swordsmanship characteristic. Although I can't make a 100% judgment, I have a rough idea of what kind of ability Qingpin's swordsmanship characteristic is. Guang Huaiye smiled. I've named her swordsmanship characteristic Interception. What do you think? Interception? Liuyan Ling was stunned. Is it the tribulation of calamity? No, it's the interception of interception, Guang Huaiye replied. Interception? Liuyan Ling silently pondered over this word. Interception of an opponent's ability? For example, cutting off that Saint Seiya's attack speed right now? Perhaps. Ji Yuhan nodded his head in agreement. Chapter 384. Guang Huaiye naturally lost. After his second Pegasus Comet Punch failed, he disappeared from the room. Then, a new die appeared on the small bar counter, which meant that Guang Huaiye had completely admitted defeat. Qingpin, who defeated Guang Huaiye, also laid on the ground like soft mud. After Gu Han fed him half a basin of braised pork in one go, he barely recovered some strength and crawled into Gu Han's nursery bag. He was so dizzy that he looked like he was about to fall asleep. Unfortunately, Qingpin couldn't enter the dream that he longed for, because there were still 3 battles waiting for Qingpin. In the next 3 throws of the die, Gu Han arrived at the combat room and needed to fight different Yuan Ku. Although these Yuan Ku were all ghost level and soul level Yuan Ku, their abilities were much worse than Saint Guang Huaiye. If Guang Huaiye was considered a mini-boss among Yuan Ku, then the 3 Yuan Kus that he encountered later were just small fries. Although he was facing these small fries, Qingpin still couldn't defeat them by himself. In the process of fighting these 3 Yuan Kus, Qingpin's first battle was bound to fail. Only with Gu Han's guidance would he be able to defeat these opponents the second time. But he had to admit that after the battle with the Saint Seiya, Light Fang, Pa's combat ability, or rather, his combat attitude, had improved significantly. When Qingpin encountered Yuan Ku, he didn't hug his head and ask for help from Gu Han, nor did he foolishly charge forward and slash randomly. Instead, he started to think about how to defeat his opponent. In the end, he still needed Gu Han's guidance. However, as the 3 battles ended, Gu Han felt that Qingpin had grown a lot, especially when he was dealing with the 3rd Yuan Ku. Qingpin's first battle was already on the right track, and he could fight back and forth with this Yuan Ku. After a dozen moves, he even had the upper hand. In the end, he lost because Qingpin's swordsmanship foundation was too terrible, and he couldn't use swordsmanship flexibly. Gu Han believed that as long as he trained him, Qingpin's combat ability and swordsmanship would be able to catch up to an ordinary ancient sword mistress in a short period of time. By the way, when he was fighting with the 3 Yuan Kus, Gu Han used his authority as a sword-bearer to give Qingpin an order. During the battle, Qingpin was not allowed to speak. This was because Guhan found that if he wanted to use Qingpin's swordsmanship characteristic, he would have to use his mouth to say it. Otherwise, the swordsmanship characteristic wouldn't be able to be used. At the very least, he would have to mention a certain ability that he hoped the opponent would lose. It sounded very Chinibya, but that was the truth. In Guhan's memory, the lowly Qingpin had used the swordsmanship characteristic 3 times. The first time was in Yuzhang University's indoor training with the little demon beast. Qingpin was bullied by the little demon beast's ability to fly, and when the little demon beast touched her body, she said that it would be good if he couldn't fly. Then, the little demon beast really couldn't fly. The second time was in the mine, when he was facing the 3-headed Cerberus. Qingpin, who was riding on the warhead Cerberus's back, also said, "Qingpin, you're not allowed to spit out this smelly thing again." Then, the 3-headed Cerberus really couldn't spit out any more magic energy balls. The third time was when he was fighting with Lighttooth just now. Qingpin said, "Annoying, you're too fast. Slow down your fists." As a result, Saint Seiya's left and right hands moved in slow motion. Guhan also vaguely remembered that Qingpin had used the invincibility ability in her girl form. Every time she used it, she seemed to have to say something like intercept. Something. If the girl Qingpin was the form of the cute Qingpin after the seal was removed, then obviously, even if Qingpin removed her seal, she still had to rely on a command similar to the command incantation to use the swordsmanship characteristic of intercept. That was why Guhan ordered Qingpin not to speak in order to test his guess. The fact was that when Qingpin's mouth was forcibly ordered not to speak, the swordsmanship characteristic of intercept was indeed sealed and could not be used. "Guhan, if you make Qingpin fight again, Qingpin won't sleep with you anymore today." After entering the 5th room, which was also the last room where Liuyan Ling needed to maintain her broken legs, the physically and mentally exhausted Qingpin began to threaten Guhan. Yes, after going through the tempering of a few battles, this poor person no longer ran away from battle. However, Qingpin was still a lazy guy. After fighting so many battles today, he had already given Guhan face. If he dared to force Qingpin again, Qingpin would really rebel. If not sleeping with Guhan counted as rebellion. Such a cute threat naturally couldn't make Guhan submit, but it made Liuyan Ling, who was in Guhan's arms, roll her eyes. What did he mean by not sleeping with you? Could it be that Jiyu Han, this pervert, had to sleep with the poor every night? This doesn't seem to be a battle room. Guhan looked at the small bar counter. This is another incident room. Another incident room? Liuyan Ling was looking forward to it. It would be great if she could get another broken leg incident card. That way, she would be able to sleep in Guhan's arms for another 5 rounds. Unfortunately, Liuyan Ling's luck wasn't good enough to draw the same incident card twice in a row. This time, when the incident cards were arranged neatly, Guhan randomly drew a card into his hand. "Welcome a new friend. Your longing for a friend has touched heaven-shrouding Jendi. A participant will be randomly selected from the trial array to enter the grid you are currently in." What does this mean? Liuyan Ling asked angrily after reading the contents of the incident card several times. Of course, it wasn't that Liuyan Ling couldn't understand the contents of the incident card. She was just asking even though she already knew the answer. Liuyan Ling was extremely unhappy that there was another person between Guhan and herself. "Literally?" Guhan replied calmly. At the same time, a spatial rift suddenly appeared in the air between the grids. A few seconds later, a red figure fell out of the spatial rift. "It's someone I know." Guhan recognized the participant at first glance. Who else could it be other than Song Ifei? "How did I get here? Where am I?" Song Ifei rubbed her dizzy head. She was fighting with Yuan Ku just a moment ago. In the next second, she was sucked into the spatial rift and thrown to the ground. The moment Song Ifei landed, she smelled a familiar scent. "Guhan, is that you?" Song Ifei was a little more clear-headed and got up from the ground excitedly. She would never forget this scent. It was undoubtedly Guhan's scent. Although she didn't know why she suddenly appeared next to Guhan, Song Ifei was undoubtedly excited. She was eager to share what she had just experienced with Guhan. But wait, who was the woman in Guhan's arms? Song Yifei's mind quickly regained its composure. She sized up the woman who was being carried in Ji Yuhan's arms in an enviable princess carry position. This woman doesn't look that good. The moment Song Yifei saw the woman's face clearly, she felt a strong sense of confidence. Song Yifei had never been a woman who cared too much about her appearance, but she was still sure that her appearance was definitely better than the woman's. Although the woman's appearance could not be said to be ugly, she was definitely not beautiful. At most, she was pleasing to the eye. On the contrary, Song Yifei was known as the prettiest girl in the medical center of the Swordbearers Service Center. Although she was not as beautiful as those internet celebrities who loved photoshopping photos, Song Yifei, who was barefaced, was still ahead of 90% of women. Guhan, I finally found you. That's great. Song Yifei jumped into Guhan's arms excitedly. Unfortunately, Guhan was also holding Liuyan Ling in his arms, so Song Yifei could only barely hug Guhan's neck with her arms. Originally, Song Yifei was still a little reserved. When she saw Guhan, she would not directly throw herself into his arms. However, when Liuyan Ling appeared in Guhan's arms, it was different. Song Yifei had to use some means to declare her sovereignty, otherwise, someone would have a lot of improper thoughts. Yifei, how are you? Guhan nodded and greeted her calmly. Then, he skillfully broke free from Song Yifei's arms. I'm fine, but I met a few powerful Yuan Ku and got a little injured. Song Yifei covered her chest as if she was really injured. Needless to say, with her eyes slightly closed and brows tightly furrowed, it was really easy for men to feel pity for her. They couldn't help but want to go up and care for her, comfort her, and protect her. Unfortunately, Song Yifei did not meet an ordinary man, but Guhan, who was not an ordinary man. Being injured is good for you. A sword bearer can't really grow without being injured, Guhan said dryly. His words sounded like chicken soup for the soul in his WeChat moments. Song Yifei nodded. Since her plan to seek love and care had failed, she had to take the initiative. She had to first figure out the identity of the woman in Guhan's arms, or she would not be able to sleep tonight. Guhan, aren't you going to introduce me to this lady? Is she your new friend? The sword bearer in Yangjing City? Doesn't she have long legs? Song Yifei almost asked Guhan why he was holding this woman in his arms. She is. Guhan wanted to introduce Liuyan Ling, but he was interrupted by Liuyan Ling. Liuyan Ling, who was in Guhan's arms, reached out a hand to shake hands with Song Yifei. She smiled and said, "What a beautiful girl. I'm Liuyan Ling, Guhan's classmate, and also his fiancée." Well, the charaba was about to start. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories,